Mr. Holman said this week and early next week. I talked to Mr. Holman after his press conference, and he assured me that they are going, all the surge is going, and they're going immediately. So as soon as they can pack their stuff, book a plane, move on, I would volunteer. We will help you get to the airport. We will clear the roads to get you to the airport. I will come over and pack your damn bags if that's what it takes. But I think it does answer the question. And again, this is a trust but verify. I am skeptically optimistic. I have no reason to not believe that when Tom Holman said they will be gone almost immediately. So it'd be my expectation, I think, certainly by the middle of next week, this is back to the 150. So yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the open defiance of the federal government. I mentioned that earlier, but when you collate everything that Attorney General of Minnesota Keith Ellison has said, Governor Tim Walz, Mayor Fry of Minneapolis, it's unabashed, unapologetic insurrectionary rhetoric. It's not just that they've told ICE to leave. It's not just that they've told their own police forces and law enforcement in Minnesota in general not to come to the aid of ICE. It's that they're actually working hand in glove with people on the street. In other words, they encourage them to take pictures, to harass, to block ICE law enforcement activity. And you get the impression that they feel there's no consequences. In other words, they're saying to the rest of us, the 330 million people outside Minnesota, that we, Minnesota elected officials, have the God-given right to pick and choose which federal laws that we're going to obey. And we're just not going to obey the enforcement of federal immigration law. We don't really care about 10,000 people coming across the border during the Biden administration per day, but we do care about the federal government rectifying that lapse or that crime by trying to find out where and who and how to get these people out in Minnesota. Nor do they care that ICE, according to its own figures, has rounded up 4,000 people with various criminal misdemeanors and felonies record and got them out of Minnesota, and that has contributed to Minnesota's low crime rate.
Welcome, everybody, to day 97 of the Guthrie kidnapping, which Fox is still running 24/7. None of this makes any sense. It continues to make absolutely no sense whatsoever. So don't count on there being any news coming from Fox, because they have decided they've pushed all the chips in, and they've decided to make every single one of the hosts basically hostages in line with the entire kidnapping thing. And you just have to wonder how much disinformation at this point is being put out there by the media on X. What can you believe at this point? What exactly is the truth? And one of the things we saw yesterday was everybody screaming and bitching and whining about Pam Bondi and the guy who shall remain nameless on his channel moving forward. And then, of course, the victims / hoes, who now all of a sudden are complaining about privacy, but they're on television every time you see them, which doesn't make any sense. The entire thing that we saw was, hey, look, you unredacted the names of those people standing right there who are doing press conferences every couple of weeks. I feel like we're in a cuckoo world, but what I realize at this point is we're not in a cuckoo world. Everybody knows exactly what is going on. Everybody can feel it. They can't confirm it, but they feel it. Something is very weird. It is so weird because there is a lot of news, but nobody wants to address it. And what I'm going to show you today is, here they come again. The influencers, the panicans, the black pillars, the doomers. And what they ran with today is literally a small clip of what Tom Holman said. And they're all freaking out. You might have seen it already. Oh my God, they're surrendering to Minnesota. Even Tim Walz is trying to amplify that same message. They're surrendering. They're giving up to Minnesota. It's over. They beat Trump. And I keep saying to myself, these people are not going to stop. The only thing I can do is try to bring you the truth, try to bring you all the different information so you can make an informed decision yourself. Because right now you have an ongoing, all-out assault going against you. An assault on your mind, your intelligence. The whole thing with women can't find a way to get IDs, which in itself is funny because you can't even define what a woman is. So I don't think they understand the words that come out of their mouths. And that, again, I've said many times that they don't realize people have memories. I saw probably 20 different Congress people, women and men, out there talking about how it's making it impossible for women to be able to get ID. When literally last week we were told, you don't even know what a woman is. We can't define, what's a woman? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know what a woman is? But this week, women can't get driver's licenses. Women can't find a way to get their birth certificate. We reverted to the caveman mentality. And what's worse is many people are okay becoming cavemen and cavewomen if they're women. They're echoing this crap. They're talking about it. Meanwhile, every single one of them probably has an ID in their pocket. Think about that. As one of these Congress people stand up there, and as they look at you and they're saying women can't get IDs, every single one of them have one. So if they're looking at everybody they know, every family member they have, if it's 100% percentile that every single woman they know they've ever met has an ID, what is the real percentage of women who can't get IDs? The gaslighting has now become just completely off the charts. There's just no excuse for what we're seeing. I got to show you something yesterday because I even found something that wasn't true on Grok. So that's why you have to, you have to verify. Yeah, I think the other day I said something like, even the people in Congress need an ID to vote. And some people were saying in that same chat, no, that's not true. You don't need an ID. Congress people don't need an ID to vote. Oh, really? For reference, this is how we vote in the United States House. You have to insert your photo ID, then you press a button. See, when they're sitting at those seats and they say, we're going to electronically record a vote, that's how they vote. Stick your photo ID in the slot like an ATM, then you're allowed to vote. That's it. You do need an ID to vote in the House. You can go ahead and clip this part right now so you have it to show people. But I was told you didn't need an ID. Well, what does that do? What does that show you right there? There is so much of an assault on your mind. It's very hard to sometimes extricate yourself from it, to understand where things are, what's true and what's not true. So we're going to talk about that this morning. On schedule, President Trump is supposed to come out at 1:30. He's going to be talking with Lee Zeldin. They're going to be talking about some EPA stuff. And in talking about the EPA stuff, I think it has a lot to do with climate change and destroying that narrative. And then I'm going to talk to you about this Minnesota stuff and how crazy that has become. And then, I'm seeing, actually, Fox is covering something else. They're covering what happened with Josh Hawley and Keith Ellison, which I'll show you. But before I start any of that, I'm going to talk about what happened with Tom Homan so you can actually have the truth, the absolute truth as to what's going on. But first, a word from today's sponsor. Hey, let me tell you guys about another sponsor we have today, and it would be Qualia Stem Cell, not those kind of stem cells. Can you remember a moment when your body just didn't heal like it used to? Maybe like yesterday, maybe after getting sick or pushing yourself physically. I hope you're still pushing yourself physically. What went through your mind when you still had pain like 3 days later? What's one thing you've noticed about your body changing as you've gotten older? Think about it to yourself. What have you noticed different about your body changing as you've gotten older? How has that affected your approach to health, recovery, and diet? It turns out that the secret to healing, recovery, and resilience isn't just luck, it's stem cells. These are your body's built in repair crew. But as we age, that system slows down. Fewer cells, weaker signals. Happens. We just get older. This is exactly why Qualia stem cell was created. Your cells are powerful. Make sure they stay that way with Qualia's innovative new stem cell formula. I talked to you guys a lot about different supplements. And I don't know if you guys, let me give you a little background on myself. I mean, you know about me, I play football and everything, but I'm 65 and I love what I do here. I love doing the real estate, and it takes me so much time to do everything. Last night with this system going down, thank God, and not trying to figure it out, I worked, no BS, a 16-hour day. I started at 7:30, 8 o'clock yesterday morning, and I didn't go to bed after I kissed Robin, take the dogs out, and I just went right back into the computer. Some of you guys saw it. We were running tests last night, late last night, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. And then I was this morning, up this morning at 6:30, testing again. So you don't have to accept slowing down. It's not even in my bloodstream. I will not accept slowing down. Help your body renew itself by reactivating the systems that keep you moving, healing, and thriving with Qualia's stem cell formula. You only need to take it 4 days a month. It preserves your body's regenerative capacity over time. So if you're ever felt like your body just doesn't bounce back like it used to, whether it's after a tough workout, your computer going haywire, or anything, getting sick, it's been cold, or just the wear and tear of everyday life, this is for you. Qualia Stem Cell was designed to support your body's natural repair systems, helping you heal, recover, and keep going strong. And right now, you can try it for up to 50% off at qualialife.com/Barry. And here's a bonus. Use the code Barry for an additional 15% off as well. Go to qualialife.com/Barry. Your body's built to repair itself. Qualia just helps you do it that much better. And a big thanks to Qualia for sponsoring this episode.
One man is being victimized by our own government. One man whom they fear, yet who millions love. One man who is willing to take the poison arrows of lawfare. One man whose voice has been taken away by a corrupt judge operating in a corrupt system. One man who has been ridiculed and insulted. One man who refused to back down. One man who refused to back down. One man who refused to back down. One man who stands between us and them. One man that wants to see America protected again. One man who wants to see America prosper again. One man who understands that a man is a man and a woman is a woman. One man who understands and protects the blessing of life. One man who wants to restore American exceptionalism. One man who once again wants to make America that shining city on a hill for all to see. A place where all the people of the world glowingly set their eyes upon. America. One man who unashamedly wants to make America great again. That one man is Donald Trump.
is Fanfare with Barry Cunningham.
In 2021, with Attorney General Keith Ellison as the chief law enforcement officer in our state, the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office issued a directive which prohibited the county's cooperation with immigration and customs enforcement. 4 years later, Ellison issued 2 legal opinions arguing that Minnesota law prohibits state and local law enforcement agencies from holding someone based on an immigration detainer if the person would otherwise be released from custody, and limiting county sheriff's ability to enter into 287G cooperation agreements with federal law enforcement. What happened as a result? Criminal illegal aliens were released back onto our streets, putting innocent Minnesotans' lives at risk. Take the case of Victoria Aline Harwell, for example, a Minnesota mom who was allegedly killed by an illegal alien in a drunk driving car crash. Hennepin County ignored detainer requests and let this criminal walk not once, but twice, citing Attorney General Ellison's opinion. Flash forward to December 2025, when the Trump administration launched Operation Metro Surge in Minneapolis, fulfilling the border security mandate they were given by 77 million Americans and following the uncovering of rampant Somali fraud throughout our state. As of last week, 4,000 illegal aliens have been arrested since Operation Metro Surge began.
All right, so I want to stop there because what Tom Emmer is saying is very important for people to digest. Since the so-called surge has begun, 4,000 illegals, bad guys, have been picked up and taken off the street. 4,000. And if you understand, quote, what a surge is our existing amount of people on the ground here can't get it done. Excuse me. So we need a surge. We need a bunch more people to come here and take care of this because we can't do it the way things are happening. We're being attacked. They've got this stupid network that they're blowing their whistles and telling people where they are. When we go into a house to pull somebody out, there's 2 or 3 guys that need to go into the house, but we need 8 or 9 guys to protect them. And from the beginning, when this, quote, surge began, the objective of the surge was to keep people protected while they did their jobs. That's why they had to send them in there. In addition, the reason for the surge is because the city and state were not cooperating with ICE. They were relying on this entire sanctuary city thing and saying, we're not going to help. Nope. Hey, can you just let us into jail? We'll go ahead and take the bad guys and get them out of here. Nope, we're not going to participate. All right, so now we've just got to pluck them wherever we find them. And then we've got to make sure we, separate who's just trying to be a activist, a rioter. We have to separate those people out because they keep throwing stuff at us and they keep doing crazy stuff. We could really solve this much quicker if we just have access to the jails. And so an entire month or whatever went by where Minnesota was like, nope, not going to happen. Then, as you know, 2 people end up dead. Because Minnesota, not because ICE wouldn't leave, but because Minnesota just wouldn't be a state. They decided they were going to be a sanctuary for the bad guys. And at the same time, you have to understand that the Somali fraud and all the stuff that was going on with them is separate from ICE. It's completely different. ICE is not here to to investigate fraud. They're here to investigate where the bad guys are and get them out of the country. Now, raise your hand in the chat if you thought, quote, the surge meant they were going to stay there forever. Because I'd love to know where anybody would have gotten that information, that it was going to be a permanent thing and that they would never leave Minnesota. Because if you look around today, people are saying Trump caved. When, if you know what the objective was, if you knew what they were trying to do, you would not come to that conclusion. I don't know why people do what they do. I don't know why they talk the stuff they do on social media, but I think they're just trying to whip up people in a frenzy. Because there's two things that are wrong. One, they don't know the objective. Number two, they don't know what the surge is versus regular people being, when I say regular, the regular amount of people being in the city. And then I guess you could say the third thing people don't know is, what do you think will happen if they don't continue to cooperate? If they say they're going to let people into the jail and they're letting people into the jail and they're going in and extracting people, which means they're doing the right thing at this point. I don't care what they say on television. Do we have access to the jails? Are we able to pick these people up? Yes. Okay, then it's working right now. And that's what the problem is. People think that we should never leave. So let's continue.
That includes the worst of the worst off our streets. But in response, Tim Walz and Keith Ellison sued the Department of Homeland Security for simply deploying federal law enforcement to enforce federal law. That lawsuit was ultimately rejected by a Biden-appointed federal judge, and now Trump border czar Tom Homan has been working with Minnesota officials to scale back Operation Metro Surge on the condition that local law enforcement be allowed to cooperate with federal law enforcement. Something, by the way, that occurred under the President Obama's administration. It's important to note that it didn't have to be this way. The chaos in Minneapolis was entirely preventable had the local law enforcement been allowed to work with federal law enforcement from the beginning. We see that in states like Texas, Florida, Utah. We also see that in 8 Minnesota counties, including Sherburne County, which is in my district. Sherburne and these 7 counties have proactively partnered with federal law enforcement to prevent criminal illegal aliens from roaming free, despite threats of ridiculous lawsuits by the ACLU arising from Attorney General Ellison's dangerous guidance. It's really that simple. By allowing local law enforcement to notify federal law enforcement when they arrest illegal aliens and detain them until a federal officer can come and get them, we limit the Fed's footprint and keep dangerous criminals off our streets.
Now understand there's another byproduct to this, another benefit. The visual nature of what people were seeing, the visual nature of seeing people just plucked off the street and having to be deported and brought down here to Alligator Alley and just shipped off. And they realized it wasn't stopping. You see, the newcomers have family as well. The newcomers can see what's on the news. And what they're being told by the activists doesn't equal to what's actually happening on the ground. You're going to be fine. We're not going to let these people touch you. We're here with our whistles and clang dangers and making all kinds of noise. But they're still doing it. And so the reality of what these people were seeing on the ground, they're like, you know what? I don't think you're going to be able to stop this. The judges haven't been able to stop it. We're just going to get the hell out of here out of our own. And this is another thing you won't hear unless you seek it out. I want to show you this real quick. CBS News just reported that we have a record number of detainees giving up their cases and voluntarily leaving the country. And that figure only seems to be climbing. You think so? That's not a climb. That's an explosion. I've talked to you guys many times about different things and gold and silver. And I say, you look at the trend line. A trend line is something that moves in a certain way. That's not a trend. That's an absolute flipping explosion. And if you scroll down further here so you can see the dates on this, 2020, nobody's leaving on their own. And then all of a sudden, 2025, and it explodes. See that anywhere? You hear anybody talking about that? Well, interestingly enough, CBS News did a story on it. And this story by CBS News, let me see if I got it lined up correctly. Here we go. And it says, voluntary departures hit record high as detained immigrants lose hope of getting released or winning in court. All this could have been completely avoided. This is this morning, February 12th, 9:30. Today, they announced that, oh boy, they're all getting up and getting the hell out of here because they're freaking out because everything that these newcomer enablers are doing is not working. It's not stopping. But yeah, you got people out there saying Trump's surrendering. Okay, you show me how, you look at those charts I just showed you and tell me how it's a surrender. Let's look at this article a little bit. And it says, as pathways to freedom have narrowed. Oh, what do you mean? I thought it was a surrender, that everybody's going to be able to stay. As pathways to freedom, not even citizenship. They can't even be free people here. They can't even come out of their houses. It's no way to live. Your quality of life is shit. You got to walk around, look over your shoulder and wonder, is daddy coming back? He went to go get some milk and bread, and we saw the bag of milk and bread, and daddy got vanquished. He's gone. It has narrowed in immigration courts across the United States. Across the United States, a record number of detainees are giving up their cases and voluntarily leaving the country. Stop me if you've heard this, but I'll keep going because I'm pretty sure you haven't. Last year, 28% of completed immigration removal cases among those in detention ended in voluntary departure, a higher share than in any year prior. That means history. In analysis of decades of court records found, the figure only appears to be climbing as the Trump administration and its immigration crackdown widens and detention populations swell. They just bought a huge warehouse to stick these people in. And they publicly show it. Hey, look at we got 100, 200,000 square feet of space where we're going to ship you all to. You guys want to come down here and bum rush it again? Is that what you want to do? Sure. It's not going to stop us. The percentage of voluntary departures among those detained grew nearly every month of 2025, reaching 38% in December of 2025. If you're challenged in math, 38% of people, that's a pretty big number. The analysis does not include those who were not given a hearing before an immigration judge, such as immigrants in expedited removal process. It's set up for, I love this, it's set up for every individual who is detained to get to the point where they're just emotionally drained and exhausted through it all of the way that they're being treated. Okay, all I want is my freedom, said Vilma Palacios, who agreed to return to Honduras in late December after being detained for 6 months in the bayou, the Cajun area down there. She's there for 6 months. I'm done. Okay, can I just go home? Can I just go back home? I'm sorry. I'm out of here. It's so tough. I know. I just checked they brought up the feed for Trump. It's so tough to listen to this stuff that you're seeing on the news and on X because they bury the actual truth. You don't get to see the truth. And like I said, the turning point that I'm making is I'm going to bring the stuff that people aren't talking about. The stuff that you need to know so it keeps your morale up going, no. It's not what you guys are saying. We are not going to lose the midterms.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. And you'll say, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
We're just going to keep winning. Let me ask you a question. If the Democrats felt comfortable that they were going to beat President Trump, why would they be, resisting against the SAVE Act? Oh, we got it in the bag. Do what you ever want to do. We're going to win. You look at the pollsters. Oh, my God, there's no way Trump turns this around. It's over. Well, every other indicator that is real is showing us that's not the case. Every indicator and chart that we end up seeing and verifying by third parties is not the case. What else does that number tell you? When you see that these people are in a catastrophic mode to get the hell out of here. What does that tell you? What is that 28%, the other 38% since December? What does that tell you? Those are Democrat votes. I'm sure there's some people in there who might be Republicans or would vote for Trump, but for the most part, those are their votes. Those are their votes who are like, sayonara, I'm done. I am not going to sit in jail and just sit here when every day they're walking by going, you know, you could get out of here real easy, right? Yeah, here's some beans. Yeah, see you in a while. Think of you want to talk about psyops? Think about that psyop. Oh, wow, looks like it's like 82 and sunny in Cabo San Lucas right about now. How you doing? Oh, does it feel kind of caged in here? You want some more beans and rice and, you know where you can get real good burritos? Yeah, out of here. But you're choosing to stay in here. Hey, by the way, all those people who are using the clang danglers and fang danglers and blocking traffic, they coming to see you? No, no. All right, good night. Heading home. You can jump in the pool, me and a wife, and having a barbecue. Think about you, okay? That amount of psychological pressure is causing that kind of numbers. And I'm not saying that people in ICE are doing that, but I'm not saying they're not. Because I would. Here's your free-fried beans and bologna. Oh, it smells like it was cooked 3 or 4 days ago. Enjoy it. Or you could take what's behind door number 2 and get the hell out of here. Sound mean? No, it doesn't sound mean because you have a choice. You have an absolute choice to say, I'm going home, wherever that home may be. You don't got to stay here, but you got to get the hell out of here. There is no door. There's no other door that's going to let you out. Now imagine this in like every prison across the country. Guys who have stolen, murdered, anything. These are just people who crossed the border illegally for the most part. And if they did other stuff, well, they're not getting the choice. And you say, hey, listen, Mr. Bank Robber, you can stay here for 20 or 30 years, or, you can take the boat over to Honduras. Every single one of them are going to say, give me the boat. Give me the plane ride. This is not a hard choice for these people. They know where they used to live. They know they still have probably family and friends there. They can exist and go do the life that they had. There's nobody chasing them down. It's not like going into Somalia and having to run away from a lion. Go back to Honduras, El Salvador, or wherever, and just enjoy the life you were living. And then guess what else is, here's a real good benefit. You take door number 1 here, you might be able to come back through the front door in America. Oh yeah, one other thing. You get to go back to Honduras living like a king. Here's $3,000. How long are you going to stay locked up waiting to get back into America? When you're presented that, and this is what the Democrats are freaking out about. That's why they kicked in the doors. That's why they tried to bum rush people at the gate. They were willing to do anything to make a spectacle to try and mess with your mind. Not these people's mind. They don't give a crap about them. They're never going to see them again. Maryland man, Van Hollen doesn't care about him. He's trying to influence you. And now we got a whole bunch more influencers out there who are trying to make you feel a certain way as if, guess what? Trump gave up. When the data shows nothing near to that. Doesn't need to give up. They've seen enough so far. But these crazy white people are blowing whistles and beating on these guys, but it ain't helping. That's the reality of the situation. They're trying to say that Trump wasn't successful, but the data and the outflow is saying anything but success. I mean, a failure. It's saying complete success. We'll continue.
It's a win-win for all parties involved.
Oh, wait a second. He decided to come out early, or actually, he's on time almost. President Trump, everybody, is here with Lee Zeldin.
Big as it gets, they tell me, and it's an honor to be here with a terrific person who's worked so hard on this and some other terrific people. Thank you very much. But I'm pleased to be joined today by EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin, who you all know, and to announce the single largest deregulatory action in American history. That's a big statement, in American history. And I think we can add the words by far. Under the process just completed by the EPA, we are officially terminating the so-called endangerment finding, a disastrous Obama-era policy that severely damaged the American auto industry and massively drove up prices for American consumers. Prices went up incredibly for a worse product. This action will eliminate over $1.3 trillion of regulatory costs and help bring car prices tumbling down dramatically. You're going to get a better car. You're going to get a car that starts easier, a car that works better for a lot less money. In 2009, Barack Hussein Obama, his EPA designated fossil fuels such as oil, gas, and other things that actually make factories rock and roll and other things drive very nicely as a threat to health and human welfare, known as the endangerment finding. This determination had no basis, in fact, had none whatsoever, and it had no basis in law. On the contrary, over the generations, fossil fuels have saved millions of lives and lifted billions of people out of poverty and all over the world. And you see it with the blackouts all over where they don't use it, where they went to wind, intermittent wind, which is weak and ineffective and very, very costly, most costly energy there is. And people are dying because there was no air conditioning or there was no heating. Lots of other things, bad things happened. And yet this radical rule became the legal foundation for the Green New Scam, one of the greatest scams in history, probably as great, maybe even greater than Russia hoax, etc., which the Obama and Biden administration used to destroy countless jobs. And the jobs have been just decimated. Although they're all coming back because of tariffs, they're all coming back into our country at levels we've never seen before. But it raised prices and caused immense harm to the U.S. auto industry. We thought irreparable, but we've got them back. We're coming back now. I was in Detroit, as you know, with Ford, and they had one of the earliest plants from the early 1900s, and it was going to be closed down. And then when I won, they said, let's keep it open for a little while. Let's see what happens. And they just announced, as you know, they're going 24 hours around the clock with that same plant that was going to be closed because of what we've done. For example, under the endangerment finding, they forced the hated start-stop feature onto American consumers, which unnecessarily shuts off a car's engine when you stop at a red light. In other words, the engine goes off. That's great. The endangerment finding was also used to impose the massive and really very expensive electric vehicle mandate, expensive in the sense that nobody wanted it. Everybody was going to be forced to buy an electric car in a very short period of time, even though you can't power the car because we would have had to spend $5 trillion on power stations. That's all dead, gone, over. These crippling restrictions were a major factor in driving up car prices to unprecedented levels, and the car that you were getting was not nearly as good. In 4 years under the Biden administration, the price of a new and used car rose more than 22%, all to facilitate the Green New Scam without achieving any meaningful impact on the environment, but making the car worse. That is why, effective immediately, we are repealing the ridiculous endangerment finding and terminating all additional green emission standards imposed unnecessarily on vehicle models and engines between 2012 and 2027 and beyond. This action will save American consumers trillions of dollars and will lower the average cost of a new vehicle by close to $3,000. Think of that. During my campaign, I promised to cut 10 old regulations for every new regulation. And we've exceeded that. We've instead done it 10 regulations. We were able to cut 129. So now we cut 129. So think of that. I promised to cut 10 old regulations for every new one, but we did more than 10. We did 129. It's something, nobody can even believe it. So we did a lot of regulation cutting in the first administration, a record, nobody even close to it now. We're actually exceeding it in this administration. The biggest one yet that we've done is happening right now. So perhaps no industry has benefited more from our historic deregulation campaign than the U.S. auto industry. We canceled the EPA's absurd, just totally absurd, tailpipe emission standards, which was a disaster for automobile manufacturing, and revoked Biden's emissions waiver that would have allowed California to regulate automobiles for the entire nation. And they're crazy out in California. They have nothing but trouble out there, as you know. That's why people are leaving in record numbers. I also ended Joe Biden's extreme CAFE emission standards, saving the average American consumer much more than $1,000 when they buy a new car. But now we're talking about close to $3,000. These regulation cuts, combined with our tax cuts and tariffs, are the reason why the world's largest automakers have announced that they're going to be spending in excess of $100 billion in the United States in the next very short period of time, building new auto plants. We're bringing our auto plants, assembly plants, and factories roaring back to life, not even mentioning AI and all of the other things. We're building thousands of businesses in the United States. And if you remember, on my first day, they said if I could ever get the Dow up to 50,000 in my last year, in other words, in the fourth year, that it would be an unbelievable miracle. But don't worry about it, because it'll never happen, they said. And if I could get the S&P up to 7,000, they said, in the fourth year, they said it will never happen. Let's not even talk about it. I have things. Let's not even waste our time talking about it. Well, at the very end of my first year, the Dow hit 50,000. Now it's over 50,000. And 3 days before that, the S&P hit 7,000. So we didn't have to wait till the end of the fourth year. We just waited till the end of the first year. We've never had a country in a position like this, and a lot of it's due to tariffs, and a lot of it's due to the fact that we had a great election, and a lot of good things have been done. One of the good things I did was put Lee Zeldin in charge of our environment. So I'm going to ask Lee to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lee. Thank you, Mr. President. This is a big deal. Under President Trump's leadership today, the Trump EPA has finalized the single largest act of deregulation in the history of the United States of America. Referred to by some as the holy grail of federal regulatory overreach, the 2009 Obama EPA endangerment finding is now eliminated. This action will save American taxpayers over $1.3 trillion. What that means is lower prices, more choices, and an end of heavy-handed climate policies. With today's announcement, American families will save over $2,400 for a new vehicle. 16 years ago, an ideological crusade within the Obama administration set off the most costly regulatory power grab our country has ever experienced. The 2009 Obama EPA endangerment finding led to trillions of dollars in regulations that strangled entire sectors of the United States economy, including the American auto industry. They claim new powers over the vehicles we drive, even though the best reading of the Clean Air Act clearly states otherwise. The Obama and Biden administrations used it to steamroll into existence a left-wing wish list of costly climate policies, electric vehicle mandates, and other requirements that assaulted consumer choice and affordability. And who paid the biggest price? Hardworking families, small businesses, millions of Americans who just want a reliable, affordable car to get to work, take their kids to school, or go to church on Sunday. The endangerment finding and the regulations that were based on it didn't just regulate emissions. It regulated and targeted the American dream. And now the endangerment finding is hereby eliminated, as well as all greenhouse gas emission standards that followed. The red tape has been cut. Manufacturers will no longer be burdened by measuring, compiling, or reporting greenhouse gas emissions for vehicles and engines. And the forced transition to electric vehicles is eliminated. No longer will automakers be pressured to shift their fleets towards electric vehicles, vehicles that are still sitting unsold on dealer lots all across America. And as a cherry on top, we are ending the federal government's push to get manufacturers to install that Obama switch, the almost universally despised start-stop feature. There will be no more climate participation trophies awarded to manufacturers for making Americans' cars die at every red light and stop sign. It's over, done, finished. Under President Trump's leadership, vehicle manufacturers can once again build what Americans want, not what politicians and bureaucrats in Washington demand. President Trump campaigned on reviving the auto industry, and he continues to deliver win after win after win, ending electric vehicle mandates, getting rid of the Biden Cafe standards with Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, and securing massive new U.S. manufacturing investments and all of the jobs that come with it. Affordable cars mean opportunity. That means jobs, healthcare, education, and mobility, especially for working families and rural Americans who rely on their vehicles every single day. And this isn't just about making the American economy boom. It's also about restoring the rule of law, a fundamental principle of our great republic. For years, unelected bureaucrats twisted the Clean Air Act into something it was never meant to be. The Obama administration twisted itself into some kind of mental pretzel to invoke authority it didn't have and to sidestep Congress. They claimed that 6 greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles, some of which aren't even emitted from vehicles and trucks, contribute some amount above zero to global climate change, what they said endangered public health. But their wild web of mental leaps isn't prescribed in federal statute. The Obama EPA's House of Cards upended the best reading of the Clean Air Act, as well as 50 years of EPA precedent on what constitutes regulable air pollution. In the 16 years that intervened, the Supreme Court has established clear precedent in Loper Bright Enterprises and West Virginia versus EPA. And in light of these Supreme Court decisions and other developments, upon his swearing in last year, President Trump immediately tasked on day one submitting requirements, recommendations, research on the legality and continued applicability of the 2009 endangerment finding. And at Trump's speed, he wanted that research and recommendation turned around instantly. We looked at the Clean Air Act. We looked at what the highest court in the land had said, and we used a very simple metric. If Congress didn't authorize it, EPA shouldn't be doing it. Congress never voted for these climate mandates inside of Section 202 of the Clean Air Act. If Congress wants EPA to regulate the heck out of greenhouse gases emitted from motor vehicles, then Congress can clearly make that the law, which they haven't done for good reason. Today, we dismantle the tactics and legal gymnastics used by the Obama and Biden administrations to backdoor their ideological agendas on the American people. Following the plain language of the law, we have now realigned EPA's rulemaking to reflect the Clean Air Act exactly as it is written and as Congress intended, not as others might wish it to be. Where our predecessors focused on trying to make and please a few fear-mongering climate alarmists, the Trump EPA is making decisions to benefit all Americans based on common sense and reality. And the American people are tired of paying the price of political games. Last November, they voted for an administration that would listen to them. They told us that the price of a newer, safer vehicle was too high. They told us they didn't want cars that shut off at every red light. They told us dealers were sitting on lots filled with electric vehicles that nobody wanted or were buying. The Trump EPA listened. We heard you and we acted. And today's action does not change regulations on traditional air pollutants and air toxics. This EPA is committed to providing clean air for all Americans. Powering the great American comeback is based on the singular focus of providing clean air, land, and water for all Americans while harnessing the greatness of the American economy. That's a big difference from our predecessor. We believe that we can and must choose both. If you want an electric vehicle, buy one. If you want a diesel truck, then buy that. If you want a gas-powered vehicle or a hybrid, well, more power to you. That's what freedom and choice look like. We're restoring the rule of law, we're grounding policy in reality, we're giving power back to the American people. And we're bringing back the American dream stronger than ever before. EPA will never waver on its core mission of protecting human health and the environment, and this administration knows we can do that while ushering in the golden age of America. To recap, the 2009 Obama EPA endangerment finding and all greenhouse gas emission standards on light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles that followed is eliminated. American families now will save over $2,400 for a new vehicle. Today, the single largest act of deregulation in the history of the United States, over $1.3 trillion. The elimination of the endangerment finding is signed, sealed, and delivered.
Thank you, Lee. That was long, but good. It was good. Maybe I should say great. It was great, and we appreciate it. Would you have anything to say, Russ? Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Literally no other president would have done this to get at the foundations of the Green New Deal, so tremendously excited that we are where we are today. Great work by Lee. I'm a little worried that this next year will be, EPA alone will be dereg east by the number of things that are going to come out of EPA. So great work to the team. $1.3 trillion in savings, massive historical opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Please. Would you like to speak? You're worthy of it. Good man.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today is a historic day led by President Trump's leadership. No other president, as Russ said, would have undertaken this and at the speed we did. It was a great team effort. This is the model of the Trump administration, everyone working together, mission aligned.
And Lee is also working on cleaning up the horrible situation with regard to farm equipment. You could use John Deere as an example and other companies where tractors are unbelievably expensive and don't work as well because of all of the environmental nonsense that was put on them. Also excavators, any equipment like that, bulldozers, Caterpillar tractor would be a beneficiary, I guess, but the people are going to be a beneficiary because the equipment's going to be a lot less expensive, and it's going to also, most importantly, it's going to work much better, much better. So we're working on that immediately as we speak. We'll probably make it so that any of that equipment built in the United States will not have to go through this. If it's built outside, I think we'll probably leave the standard the same. If people are going to send us equipment, let them have that standard for whatever it's worth, which is not much. And I think that's a very big announcement, too, and we're going to see if we can get that done very quickly so that all of that equipment that we have made, including lawnmowers, et cetera, you won't have to go to the finest schools in the world in order to figure out how to operate it. Okay? So any questions, please?
President Trump, thank you for this. And after this much applauded move to roll back the former EPA's endangerment finding, what additional steps do you plan on taking to scale back what many are calling climate industry scams? Specifically, and Secretary Zeldin knows about these wind turbines they're trying to bring to New York. Judges allowing them to be rebuilt right near your hometown in Jamaica, Queens. They're being called a national security threat for air traffic coming into the airport. What could you do to make sure these things
Well,
don't
we're trying to make sure it
environment?
doesn't happen, and we've basically stopped all windmills in this country. It's the most expensive energy you can get. They're all made in China, a little bit in Germany, but mostly in China. And we're putting them all over our fields and ruining the fields and killing the birds and all of this. And the environmentalists say they like them, but they really are a tremendous eyesore. They've ruined. Europe has gone, as you know, it's gone to it. Europe isn't even recognizable anymore between immigration and because of, you know, environmental things like the windmills, which are taking over. The people hate them. The energy is by far the most expensive. And we're fighting very hard to make sure that they don't get built. I hope we don't have one built during my administration. We inherited some contracts where they've gone down the line a little bit. We're trying to terminate them for a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons, as you had mentioned, it's endangerment for the military. It's also endangerment for airliners. So we're trying to take care of those situations now. They should have never been allowed in the first place. Yeah, please.
Thank you so much for taking
Sure.
questions. What do you tell Americans who are concerned that the $1.3 trillion in savings does come at a cost to public health and the environment based on science?
I tell them don't worry about it because it has nothing to do with public health. This was all a scam, a giant scam. This was a ripoff of the country by Obama and Biden. And let's say Obama started it and got it rolling. And a terrible ripoff. They'll have more money to spend for health care, if you look at it. Now they can go out and spend it on something that's meaningful. And nobody's doing more for health care than the Republican Party. And that starts with the fact that prescription drugs are going to be coming down at numbers that nobody's ever seen before. They're falling. You know, we were paying the highest prices in the world by far, sometimes by 10 times more than other countries. Now we're going to be paying whatever the lowest price is anywhere in the world. We're going to be paying that. It's called favored nations, most favored nations. And I think it's the biggest thing to happen in this world, the world of medicine, prescription drugs, ever. There's never been anything like it. You know, if like in my third year, first term, I actually got prices down 1/4 or 1/8%, and I was so proud of myself because they were like that for years and years. And since under Biden, they went up very, very substantially. And now they're coming down by, depending on, you could say 500, 600, 700%, depending on the way you want to, or you could say 80%. It doesn't matter. They're coming down by numbers that nobody ever thought possible. I got it all done, and I got it all approved, and all of the countries all over the world are going to pay more. They've agreed to pay more because of tariffs. I said, if you don't do it, we're going to have to tariff you, and they've all agreed to do it. Otherwise, they would have never done it. That was why no president has ever been able to get it done. Please.
Yeah, Mr. President, you took more than 600 deregulatory actions in your first year here. Coming from the business world, you know how unnecessary red tape can hinder business expansion, investment expansion. Given the magnitude of this announcement here today and the deregulatory action you took in your first year, how much economic growth can we expect to see as your term progresses?
It's a great question. I think that it'll be enormous. Who knows really what the number is, but I can tell you in terms of economic growth, we have $18 trillion being invested in this country right now, the most ever of any country by far, not even close. Think of it, no matter where, not just here. $18 trillion is coming in, and that money is being spent right now as we speak in new plants and equipments. And you may have heard Lee mention, I mentioned also, that over $100 billion is going to be spent in this very short period of time just by foreign auto companies on building auto plants in the United States. The greatest thing that ever happened to the United Auto Workers. You know, the head man was not been nice to me, but now I understand he's saying this is the greatest auto president in history. But the auto workers gave me their vote, and they knew what I was doing, and they know what needed to be done. The tariffs saved them, but this is now taken it to a level that I think, Lee, that nobody ever thought even possible. They thought this was, nobody would have the courage to do it. We have to have the courage to do it because we're making America great again. This is a big factor in making our country great. If you look at some of these cars, they didn't even work. They had computers all over the place trying to save a half an ounce of fuel. We have fuel for the next 500 to 1,000 years under our feet, and they're trying like hell to save a half an ounce of fuel. The whole thing is just crazy. Please, go ahead, please.
Mr. President, is climate cooperation with China no longer in America's interest? And could you please confirm that you are going to visit China the first week of April?
Yeah, I'll be visiting President Xi in April. Look forward to it. He's coming here later in the year, and I look very much forward to it. No, our relationship with China is very good right now, and this is, not relevant too much having to do with China, what we're announcing today. But no, my relationship with President Xi is very good. Yes.
Mr. President, following your meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday, has your thinking changed at all as it relates to these negotiations with Iran or the timeline with Iran?
We have to make a deal, otherwise it's going to be very traumatic. Very traumatic. I don't want that to happen, but we have to make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time, and they got Midnight Hammer instead. And this will be very traumatic for Iran if they don't make a deal. Look, if they don't make a deal, then it'll be a different story. But we had a very good meeting yesterday with Bibi Netanyahu, and he understands, but it's ultimately up to me. If the deal isn't a very fair deal and a very good deal with Iran, then it's going to be, I think, a very difficult time for them in the back. I guess over the next month, something like that. Yeah, it should happen quickly. They should agree very quickly. Yeah.
Mr. President, we might be heading into a partial government shutdown. When was the last time you spoke with Chuck Schumer, and do you still feel Democrats are negotiating in good faith?
Well, a week ago I spoke, but we have to protect our law enforcement. Actually, the Supreme Court gave a ruling, or one of the courts gave a very big ruling on masks, that you have the right to use them, for personal protection if you want. So I don't know how that interjects. They want our law enforcement to be totally vulnerable and put them in a lot of danger. They have some things that are really very, very hard to approve, frankly. As you know, it's only pretend. We had various of the other bills, that's all done, but we're left with this one. We have to protect our law enforcement, very important. Please.
Why does Prime Minister Netanyahu want you to stop negotiating with Iran?
He is, you're saying stop entertaining, stop talking to them? Didn't say that, we didn't discuss that. I'll talk to them as long as I like, and we'll see if we can get a deal with them. And if we can't, we'll have to go to phase two. Phase two will be very tough for them. I'm not looking for that.
Mr. President, there are currently 0 Israeli hostages left in Gaza because of you. Thank you for that. And now that the war is ending in Gaza and Israel, I wanted to ask, do you believe Bibi bears any responsibility for the security failures that we saw on October 7th?
Well, October 7th was a rough time, and I guess everybody's responsible. It's you to look, but it was a terrible attack. It was a sneak attack. It was as violent as unfortunately, I've seen some of the results at levels that probably even you, good reporter, but probably you haven't seen. It was a horrible thing that took place. People were surprised. It was a surprise attack. Nobody saw that coming. He didn't see it coming. Nobody else would have seen it coming if they were in his position, I don't believe. But I can tell you he's been a very good wartime prime minister. He's been very strong. We've worked with him very well. We had tremendous success with Iran and everything else we've done. And he really has been. He's been, extraordinary as far as a wartime prime minister. Not easy. And, you have a president that refuses to give him a pardon. I think that man should be ashamed of himself. A pardon over this trial that's going on. The president of Israel, the primary power he's got is the power to give pardons. And he's not, he said he's given it 5 different times, but he doesn't want to do it because I guess he loses his power. I think the people of Israel should really shame him. He's disgraceful for not giving it. He should give it. But Bibi's been a great wartime prime minister, and I've been the best friend to Israel I think that they've ever had. A lot of people say beyond presidents that they've ever had, and we will continue to be. Yes, ma'am.
On the SAVE Act, Mr. President. Voter ID polls very well nationally. Even the majority of Democrat voters want it.
Right.
So why do you think Senate Democrats are resisting the SAVE Act? And what is your strategy and realistic pathway to getting the SAVE Act passed to ensure free and fair elections for the next generation?
It's such a great question. I appreciate it, actually, because it's called the Save America Act. We've changed the name. It's the Save America Act, and the Democrats are against it. I heard one of them saying, we will stop the Save America Act. No, we're trying to save America. And it has to do with largely voting. And basically, it's got three very simple points. It's got voter ID, photo ID, but voter ID with a photo, right? It's got the confirmation of U.S. citizenship. You have to be a citizen. So you have a vote, you have an ID. That's about a 99% one. And I think 90% with Democrats. Then you have confirmation U.S. citizenship. That's about a 99% one with Republicans, about 86% with Democrats, except Democrat politicians because they cheat on elections. And then you have no mail-in ballots. And it would be no mail-in ballots, very important. You know, we're the only country in the world that does a system like we do. We're the only country in the world that has mail-in ballots. The way we do this is unbelievable. It guarantees cheating. So it's no mail-in ballots with the exception of disability, illness, military, or if you're traveling, you can get an exemption. You know, if you happen to be out of the country for a good reason, you can have an exemption. So with exceptions, it's no mail-in ballots, and that will assure the security of our crooked elections. We have crooked elections, yeah.
Mr. President, have you fired or disciplined that staffer who posted the video from your account that included the Obamas?
No, I haven't. That was a video on, as you know, voter fraud, and fairly long video, and they had a little piece and had to do with the Lion King. It's been very well, it's been shown all over the place long before that was posted. But that was a very strong, and I'm sure you saw it, a very strong piece on voter fraud. And the piece that you're talking about was all over the place many times, I believe for years. Yeah, please.
Were you aware that Secretary of Commerce visited Epstein's Island, and do you continue to have?
No, I wasn't aware of it. No, I didn't. I actually haven't spoken to him about it. I wasn't. But from what I hear, he was there with his wife and children. And I guess in some cases, some people were. I wasn't. I was never there. Somebody will someday say that. I was never there. Yeah, please.
This announcement that you made today, Mr. President, comes on the heels of a January jobs report that smashed industry expectations.
Smashed all records.
And a big feature of that was you reprivatizing the economy, an economy that was bloated with federal employment under the previous president. What's your message to Americans following this jobs report that smashed industry expectations? Is this just a sign that the best is yet to come?
Thank you. The jobs report's amazing in certain ways because we have tremendously fewer federal employees, way down. And now I could have left them and added to what we did, and we would have had almost 100% employment. I could have gotten a great kick out of the fact that we're 100% employed. But we got rid of tremendous numbers of federal workers, and they hated me for it. Now they love me because most of them have gotten jobs in the private sector for 2 and 3 times more money than they were being paid by the federal government. We had some jobs where you had 10 workers for one job. 10 workers for a job that one person should be doing. And we've gotten rid of a lot of those jobs. And by getting rid of them, these people became available to work in the private sector. And as you know, the numbers are incredible. So the job numbers are incredible. The financial numbers are beyond belief. Again, they thought it couldn't be done in 4 years, and I did it in 1 year. And the numbers you're going to see is these, I don't know if you notice also construction numbers, the jobs for construction workers. You know why? Because they're building plants all over the United States. That's why. And when these plants open in a year from now, some sooner, some a little bit later, but when these auto plants, AI plants, and thousands of other types of plants, when they open over the next period of a year, year and a half, you're going to see numbers like we've never seen before in this country. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Let's go.
Well, he was pretty pretty quick with that in terms of the deregulation. Pretty much self-explanatory. If you're like me, you hate that little button on the car anyway, where you have to hit it so that it doesn't stop at the light or anything. So I'm all for that. All right, so I'm going to get back to my show. Sure, I got a lot you guys are going to hear. I'll be back in 90 seconds.
Welcome back to Fanfare with Barry Cunningham.
Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, and Jacob Fry are so beholden to their radical sanctuary state and city agenda that they've lost all common sense.
We now have the ability to arrest criminal aliens in the safety and security of jails throughout the state at the time they're being released.
Now, see, that part of the equation, if you didn't see the entirety of the press conference, you see all the people out there screaming and moaning, whining and bitching and blackpilling. Oh, he capitulated. He surrendered. And that is the part that they're not sharing. They're not sharing that we now have the agreement. We now have the ability to go into any jail in the state, which is what they wanted. I don't understand how some people don't accept wins. And they turn wins into losses. And I have to blame it probably on the algorithm that they are now getting monetization. And obviously, if you hate Trump or you disagree with some of the stuff or you lie, it gets more clicks. And it's too easy to give people the right information. Here you go. We got everything we wanted. We don't do that. We still need to trash you. We need to tell everybody that you guys suck and that we're going to lose the midterms. But we got what we wanted. They're self-deporting. We can go into the jails. But that's, I need to tell people you suck. That's the only thing I'm joking about it. But at the same token, I don't know what else to tell these idiots.
Like we've done in other states. I've also directed the strategic placement of officers in certain areas throughout the states that can respond quickly to sheriffs that want to release somebody and notify us. We need to be nearby so they don't hold them unnecessarily. So we worked on a strategic plan to reassign officers in those key locations. Arresting a public safety threat in the safety and security of a jail is safer for the alien, it's safer for the officer, and safer for the community. I think.
Have you heard him say in the entire time that he came in there, even with what Greg Scavino has said, Bavino, have you heard anything different, or has this been what they've said from day one? Give us access to the bad guys in the jail. It's very simple. You guys control this. We're going to win whether you like it or not. If you don't give us what you want, we're going to deluge a whole bunch of people in here. We're going to have thousands of people running the streets here, driving around. If you don't like that, you got the key to this prison. Just let us in the jails. And people aren't accepting a win. And like I told you the other day, I'm not getting frustrated because I can see wins.
We all can agree on that. It requires less resources for at-large operations. It just makes sense. I'll say it again, as I've said many times, we are not asking local law enforcement to act as immigration officers. I don't want them to be immigration officers. We're the immigration officers. We just want them to be cops. We're asking law enforcement to coordinate with other law enforcement to help keep public safety risk out of the communities. In addition to taking public safety threats off the street, ICE here in this state have located 3,364 missing unaccompanied alien children.
I don't see anybody talking about that. That is something that should be, instead of this kidnapping from, whatever is going on, why are we not screaming off the rooftops that they found all these kids? You're following every one of these so-called survivors everywhere they go. Everybody will stick a microphone in front of their faces. Why are nobody talking about the kids that are being saved? Why are we not amplifying wins? Because wins don't sell. If it bleeds, it leads. We don't want to have the good stuff out there. It makes Trump look good. He found kids. That's the messaging. You guys have to push this out.
Children that the last administration lost and weren't even looking for. That's because the leadership of President Trump, these children were located. With that, and success that has been made arresting public safety threats and other priorities since this surge operation began, as well as the unprecedented levels of coordination we have obtained from state officials and local law enforcement.
Okay, so before he says it, you just heard the qualifiers. We've had great success. They've agreed to go ahead and work with us. They don't want any more of this smoke, is what he's actually saying. I don't care what they say on television. I don't care what they're saying in public. We now have access to the jails. And so given that we've obtained this level of success,
I have proposed, and President Trump has concurred, that this surge operation conclude. A significant drawdown has already been underway this week and will continue through the next week. We have a lot of work to do across this country to remove public safety risk who shouldn't even be in this country, and to deliver on President Trump's promise for strong border security and mass deportation. Law enforcement officers drawing down from this surge operation will either return to their duty stations or be assigned elsewhere to achieve just that.
All right, so he laid it out perfectly for everybody who was willing to listen. We caught all these bad guys. Tom Emmer, 4,000. We recovered thousands of kids. We now have access to the jail. And the only part people are framing is they're withdrawing, not the agents, they're withdrawing the surge. We don't need thousands anymore. It is now working the way it's supposed to work. And like it doesn't, as he said, in every other state that's cooperating. We don't have roving Humvees of people out there. We don't have thousands of agents roaming the street. But I've seen ICE vehicles at the local jail because the people down here cooperate the way it's supposed to be. Now, also, you might be thinking, well, Barry, that doesn't help with mass deportations. Well, if that doesn't help with mass deportations, does that help? Where is it? How come this thing didn't work? It didn't work, but my thing is all messed up again because it blinked off while we were doing the show. The chart I showed you with all the self-deportations, if all those self-deportations are now a byproduct of because it got so much publicity, then yes, the mass deportations are still happening, even if they're self-deportations. If millions of people are just, I'm out, I'm done, and leaving, are we not going to count those deportations? Just wondered.
Permanent personnel will remain for a period of time to close out and transition full command and control back to the field office, as well as to ensure agitator activity continues to decline and that state and local law enforcement continue to respond to ensure officer and community safety. Additionally, federal government personnel assigned to conduct criminal investigation into the agitators, as well as the personnel assigned here for the fraud investigations, will remain in place until the work is done.
Okay. What's that sound like to you? They're not withdrawing. There's no retreat here. We got what we need. We're going to continue working on other stuff with the, Department of Justice and the FBI in regards to these fraudsters, i.e. Somalians and everybody else who are doing some fraud, but we don't need thousands of people here. We're going to deploy them in other areas, California. That's what he's saying. We're moving our resources around because we don't have to have the same things here. But they're not talking about that. They just rather gaslight you.
I will also remain on the ground for a little longer to oversee the drawdown of this operation.
Okay, I'm sorry to stop so much. Nobody's talking about that. The boss is still here. I am going to make sure that as we move and pull people back, that there's no hiccups. Because if there's a hiccup, I'll hit the digits and they're all coming back. I'll be the last man out. I'll let you know when it's time, when we've got to the point where we're going to get to. Nope, nobody's talking about that. Oh my God, Trump surrendered. Oh, he waved the white flag.
Sure, it's success. It's success. For those that say we are backing down from immigration enforcement or the promise of mass deportations, you are simply wrong.
Nice.
Look at the data. Record number of arrests and deportations under President Trump's first year. And we'll continue that effort. Prioritizing public safety threats and national security threats doesn't mean we'll forget about everybody else. We will take action on everybody else. That's just a stone cold fact. As President Trump has said from day one, we're going to prioritize the public safety threats. Again, but prioritization doesn't mean forget about everybody else. That means if you have a criminal alien here and non-criminal here, the criminal always comes first because he's the biggest threat to the communities. We're going to continue to force immigration law, but we're going to get back to the footprint here, the normal footprint here. But there will be some security teams staying here, the QRFs, until we're assured that those agitators incidents either stay low or further decline. I'm not going to remove everybody out of the safety of our officers, but
I mean, it's all there. All you have to do is listen. You actually just have to listen to the cut. Before you clip that one piece and say it's surrender, you just have to listen to the man. He tells you what the plan is. They're asking questions like, no, we're not abandoning. We're not waving a white flag. We're the whole reason for any of this is just so you guys understand that for some reason, and I don't know what it is, I don't know how to measure it, I can't figure it out other than possibly the algorithm and getting paid for clicks and likes, that people say some of the stuff they do and leaves so much of the information off the clipping room. They just share certain things that they want you to hear and don't put this entire context around it. A little bit more effort. Well, actually, it's a lot more effort because you have to spend the time and listen to the whole press conference. You just can't take a clip off of X and go, here's what he said. Well, did you hear the other clips? Did you hear the entirety of what he was saying? No, they don't care because now they're on to the next, self-righteous bullcrap. This is one of the reasons why, and I'm not going to get into it too deep here, but why I had mentioned that you guys might want to begin, if you have the ability, to begin using X Pro. And maybe I'll do something about X Pro tonight. It does have a cost, and not everybody can do it. It's nominal, but it's not free. But when you use X Pro, you can use lists. And if you guys aren't using list on X, you're really missing out. That's why you see so many people who do this all day long, and they just keep looking. Whereas if you had list and you said, I'm going to put these people in a list. I'm going to put Kristi Noem. I'm going to put Tom Homan. I'm going to put Caroline Leavitt. I'm going to put the White House. I'm going to put some people in a list. And these are the only people I want to hear from. I don't want to spend time going like this all day long listening to BS. It's very simple. And so now when I get on X, I go to X Pro and get on my list, and inside there, those are the only people I want to take information from. Maybe I'll move you on to the list if I can trust you. I trust the guys like Eric Doherty. I trust guys like Nick Sortor. I'll put them in a list. I'll put those in a reporter list. And if you're a reporter, like what's his name, Andy No, I'll move him into the reporters list. You've built up currency. And because you've built up currency, I'll put you in a list. And now when I open up my computer, it's just a bunch of lists of people who I have already curated and said, I want to hear what they have to say. And once you have that, you don't hear all the crap. You don't even see all the crap. You just have the signal, not the noise, pure signal. So if you have the chance, if you can, I mean, it's like $8-9 a month. Don't get it if it's going to stretch you. Do not do it just because you're consuming news. You can create lists for free. I don't know if you know that. You can create a list for free, and you don't need X Pro to view it. You can just go to your list, and you can just see who's in there. And I trust Hamid Dillon. I trust this person that they're going to give me the right information, the right story. Not this guy who hates Trump and he's taking a clip here and don't do it, because you got to have the context, and it just takes a little bit of time.
Like I said, and Operation Metro Surge is ending. And in the next week, we're going to deploy the officers here in detail back to their home stations or other areas of the country that are needed. But we're going to continue to enforce immigration law. That's what the American people voted for.
Context. We're going to keep doing it. We're not giving up. We're not waving a white flag. We're not quitting. I'm not going to go play golf. I'm going to get bad guys over and over and over.
But it has to be a priority of criminals. And look, I hear all the hate about, you should arrest everybody. Well, we are. But we're prioritizing those who are the biggest threat to our community. The rapists, the murderers, the child molesters. That's the right thing to do. But I'll say it again. President Trump made a promise of mass deportation, and that's what this country's going to get. But it's smart law enforcement to do targeted enforcement operations. Now, I've heard people attack me using the word targeted. I sat for the last 2 months when I watched this operation, daily press briefings are talking about targeted Title 8 operations. Nothing's changed, other than we're going to make sure they're targeted and make sure we know who we're going for, what their immigration record, what's their criminal history. That comes first. But enforcement of Title 8 is not going to end. If you're in this country legally, you're not off the table.
See? How many people are going to see that today? We're not going to end. If you're not supposed to be here, you're not supposed to be here. We are still going to keep coming for you. We got this priority, and we're going to go after these people, but it doesn't mean you get out of jail free. We're still coming for you. And if we end up having to grab you while we're grabbing target A, that's a double whopper right there. Without cheese. You get them both. Bring them all. Get rid of them all. That's the whole idea.
I think we're proving that if you look at the data. It shouldn't be a partisan issue that you arrest public safety threats in the safety and security of a jail. Releasing public safety threats back in the public is just stupid. And I've been arguing this for years. And I hope Congress takes action on sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. It makes sense. If you think about it, even the argument I hear, well, victims and witnesses of crime that are in the country illegally want to feel safe to come to law enforcement and to report those crimes without fearing that this law enforcement agency is working with ICE. That's a bunch of crap. Because victims and witnesses of crime don't want the bad guy released in the neighborhood either. It's ridiculous. We want access to the person that you chose, the local jurisdiction chose, to lock in a jail cell. And we have that cooperation here now. Right?
That's the answer. That is specifically the answer. Now you know. That's what it's all about. We have access to the jail. And too many people just try to give out half information. I think I've made my point here that there's an alternative reason why people put certain things out, because it furthers what they have to say. I believe it. I know I've got a YouTube channel. I've got an X page, but I don't create things with the intent of changing the context. I want you to see the whole story. And then if you need more, go look it up. Go look at the entire, I think it was like 30-minute press conference. That's what I'm hoping. I hope people take the initiative and say to themselves, let me go listen to the entire press conference that Tom Homan gave. It is worth my time. I see the different things that he said. I see what this person says. Why don't I take the initiative to actually open this up and figure out what it is that he said in its entirety, instead of just the morsels of 20 seconds here and 20 seconds there.
Thing to do, and it makes this community safer. This community is safer because we arrested 4,000 illegal aliens, and there's over 4,000 illegal aliens here. Many of them public safety threat. Not all of them. As I said, we're going to force immigration law, but this community is much safer because of President Trump's leadership and the men and women standing on the stage.
So in closing on that Tom Homan section, with what he just said, the last thing he said, can anybody, anywhere, on either side of the aisle, dispute what he just said? That no matter what you think, no matter how pissed off you are, this community is safer. Yesterday, I showed you a chart put out by CBS News that said, we haven't seen this low of a murder rate in the United States since 1900. And between the Guthrie kidnapping and Bondi with the survivors, nobody's talking about these actual facts. A lowest murder rate since 1900. How do you dispute that? Well, you don't have to, because we're never going to talk about it. No one's going to bring that up to people. They don't want you to know that. They don't want that to be a talking point. They don't want you going to the hair salon or the barbershop this weekend. Hey, how you doing, Barry? Hey, man, did you hear that we've got the lowest murder rate since 1900? You might get your hair pulled off like that. What? Nobody talks about this stuff. It's not juicy. The person getting shot in the head, oh, they'll cover that 24/7. The fact that there's nobody being shot in the head, they got nothing to say. And so you become a victim of what they want you to know. You are a lab rat. Hey, and they're going to have all kinds of different categories and rankings. Which of these stories actually did people click on? What did they like? Oh, they liked the one where the guy got shot in the head. Oh, they didn't like the one where there's been no murder since 1900. Why? They like the one where, they're having clang danglers and doing all kinds of different things and beating up on ICE agents in 5 degrees below zero. They like that stuff. They don't like the fact that he found 4,000 kids. That's not news. They want to talk about the survivors and the kidnapping and all that kind of crap, but they don't want to talk about, and they don't even talk about, Washington, D.C. is safe again. They don't want you to know. They don't want you to know that Bad Bunny actually got a bigger international audience than he did a United States audience, and that what TPUSA did with Kid Rock actually changed advertising forever. Nobody wants to talk about it. That's why, I keep saying we're winning. And if I was talking to any of these pollsters right now, I would ask them these questions and then they would just stutter. Just like when I asked them in the last interview. Because you didn't know a month ago or 2 months ago that they would have recovered 4,000 kids. You wouldn't have known, 2 months ago that we would have the lowest murder rate since 1900. You wouldn't have known 2 months ago that people are self-deporting at enormous rates. But then again, here we are 2 months later, and most people still don't know. And that's what they count on. We're going to lose. You're going to lose. Oh, it's so awful. I'm like, well, are people this stupid to think that women can't get IDs? Or are they too stupid to realize why are they bitching about the things that they're bitching about? What's wrong with the SAVE Act if it's a foregone conclusion? And I love this one. We can't have ICE agents at the polling centers. What does ICE do? They arrest newcomers. So they're going to arrest people who aren't supposed to be here, and we're supposed to worry about it? Like, hi. Who's worried about it? What American voter is worried about ICE people being at a poll? See, if you dissect it and pull back, you realize they are not acting like they got it won. They're not as confident as the anti-Trumpers. And I just sit back, I look at some of the stuff, and I just love it. They'll never answer me. But I would say, who's worried about ICE being at a polling center? You won't get an answer. I know women. I'm married to one. I got kids, a daughter. I got sisters. They all got IDs. All of them been married, well, except for 2 of them. I call them. Hey, you got an ID? What do you mean? Because it doesn't make any sense even if you ask them. Call your mom. Call your you got an ID? What do you mean? Of course. We are looking at a 99.9% percentile thing. Every single person you run into in the store, hey, you got ID? They'll look at you like, huh? Yeah. Who doesn't have ID in 2026? What kind of life would you have to be living for you not to have ID in 2026? Even the nuts running around in Minneapolis, I bet you they got ID. It's a nonsensical question that people, even on CNN, are saying it's widespread. But they're telling women now, you can't vote because you don't have an ID. Says no woman ever, except for the one saying it. Oh, what happened? What happened last week? Oh, yeah, the monkey ape video. Oh, black people are pissed. Most black people didn't see it, and the other black people wouldn't have cared. It's all a way to show you BS. And I say that because you're not going to believe some of the BS I'm about to show you.
To the country illegally, or you overstay a visa, should you be deported?
My simple answer is, sir, it depends.
Okay, so if somebody breaks into your home, should they be arrested for breaking and entering, or does it depend?
It's an entirely different scenario.
How's that?
Because immigration is essentially a civil, and breaking into my home is a criminal matter.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So there's laws that should be enforced, so we shouldn't enforce civil violations?
We absolutely should enforce them.
But you just said that it's a civil matter, so it's different. So if somebody
you enforce civil matters.
So if somebody commits a civil infraction, it shouldn't be enforced?
It should be.
Okay, so they should be deported.
No.
Right now, it feels like I'm watching an Abbott Costello routine. Huh? Well, by the way, the white guy is Senator Marino, or white Latin. He's Senator Marino from Ohio, and the black guy is Keith Ellison, the Attorney General. Because Attorney Generals, they're held to a different standard, the Attorney General of Minnesota. And you're not going to believe some of this stuff.
They should have due process that is associated with their petition. So, for example...
So the act of entering the country illegally, you think we should say, well, did you really do it or not do it? It's pretty obvious that they did, right?
Well, I mean, it would depend on the facts of the situation.
Bear trap closed on him. It's pretty obviously that they did it, right? Meaning pretty easy. Bam. They're here, and they're not supposed to be here, and now they're standing in front of us. How did they teleport? Did they call up, William Shatner and get dropped down here? It's pretty obvious. I loved how he said it's pretty obvious they're not supposed to be here, right?
And then they might say,
I just gave you the facts. They
Right, but-
entered the country without permission.
but Senator, what if they had a good faith basis to say they would be persecuted in their home country and subjected to real oppression there under international law? There are provisions for them to make a case.
That's a phenomenal point. Mexico and Canada, do you consider those to be safe countries or no?
Generally, I do, but there are certain
generally you
circumstances.
do? Wow,
Well, I
encourage.
And nobody will see this. Nah, they won't show this to the masses that show the people in Minnesota are making absolutely no sense whatsoever. None. Zippo. Generally, are they third world countries? You know, Canada, Mexico, and what Senator Marino was getting at is this entire thing about they're doing asylum. You're supposed to file for asylum at the first basically safe country. So if you came from Honduras or El Salvador and you're coming through Mexico, you're already in a safe country. That's where you're supposed to file for asylum. Same thing from Canada. You can't go from Somalia to Greenland to Canada and then come here and go filing for asylum. Well, why didn't you stop and do it while you were in Canada? And at that point, Ellison realized what he was saying and go, well, it depends. No. The law is you got to stop someplace else. You got to take your rest off the highway there, not here.
Trained activists to put themselves into harm's way because you had to know, because you were watching this, that there were scuffles at least, that these people were obstructing justice. I would think you'd actually, as the chief law enforcement officer of Minnesota, be concerned about people obstructing justice. So, putting their cars in streets, blocking roads. I would think as chief law enforcement, you would be concerned about that, but were you ever concerned about encouraging, I guess, people to support you to go out and put themselves into harm's way?
No, we never.
Impeding and obstructing illegal law enforcement action. Did that ever concern you?
Sir, that never happened. We all times said, if you want to protest peacefully.
All right, so I'm going to go back to one of my common refrains here and tell you that the Democrats can only exist by you not having memory, which means their people either don't go back and look or too stupid to remember, and they don't care that you guys on the right understand. What are you talking about? We saw it. Oh, they're just doing it peacefully. What part of peaceful was what we saw on video? What video? I don't know. I didn't see it.
Protest safely, but you'll never find me being against the First Amendment
right now, but
I'll always be for the First Amendment.
But you were seeing the scuffles, right? You were seeing and by the way, Minneapolis police officials could not help protect ICE officials, right? I mean, Representative Niska, isn't that, when you're talking about the nullification of federal law, isn't that one of the, Hennepin County, that they simply could not help and protect ICE in their legal law enforcement actions?
The Minneapolis Police Department issued guidance in July saying that they would not even help with crowd control around.
And so they're sitting on the panel with him, and they're trying to answer, but nothing they say makes any sense. These people are blithering idiots. I mean, complete blithering idiots.
As a government official would have said, back off. Let us work with ICE. Let's cooperate with them. Let's see if we can't de-escalate this. But Attorney General, you did the exact opposite. And 2 people are dead because you encouraged them to put themselves into harm's way. And now you're exploiting those 2 martyrs. That was a tragedy. It never should have happened. Now, we can investigate, but I can't imagine being a law enforcement official where I know my colleagues have been shot at, their vehicles rammed, that their trained activists deployed. And by the way, we know at least one of those activists had a semi-automatic pistol with extra clips. So now you're an ICE officer, You're doing enforcement action. You've got a team behind you trying to protect you. You've got all these trained activists behind you. Is it any wonder they're at hair trigger alert? A tragedy was going to happen, and you encouraged it. And you ought to feel damn guilty about it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, sit there and smirk. Smirk. It's sick. It is despicable.
Are you asking me for comment, Senator? Because everything you said was untrue. It was a nice theatrical performance, but it was all lies.
Senator Hassan.
Wait for it. Wait for it. Watch what Ron Johnson says. Oh, this is good.
You disgust me.
Ah! You disgust me. No, it's funny because I don't like the theatrics on either side. I don't like what they do when Pam Bondi is testifying. I don't like the theatrics on our side when someone else is testifying. I wish we got to the point where you just asked a question and got an answer. And I guess this is merely an exhibit on how far apart we are and how, as Ron Johnson said, you disgust me. Imagine saying that to another individual on the street. It's bad enough. But you're looking at an elected official and you're looking at him and going, you disgust me. And I don't fault Ron Johnson for saying it whatsoever. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not being pious and saying you shouldn't talk that way. What I'm saying is we are looking at a government right now that is broken beyond repair. They don't like us. We don't like them. They don't have the same values that we do. And in fact, they want our values diminished. And so when you're looking for well, I don't know who looks for common ground anymore. I don't know how we have common ground anymore. I don't want boys and girls sports. I don't want transformers and libraries. I don't want people who aren't supposed to be here to be here. These are what I thought were American values, but no longer. The other side, for the most part, that's what they want. And so the hearings that we see that we don't like to cover because it's just craziness, one of the things that I think you can get value out of this is to begin realizing, absent some act of God, there's no way we're coming back together as a country. One side is going to have to defeat the other. And I'm not talking about, unlike them, I'm not talking about putting Democrats in concentration camps or re-education camps. They're just going to have to learn like we learn with our parents. There was no negotiation. Do this, and if not, the belt's coming off, we're going to whack the butt. And I think we need a lot of whack-a-butt going on because we're past the point of being able to negotiate. It's obvious. And if it wasn't obvious then, here's some more for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Ellison, let me start with you. You're the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. Do I have that correct? That's a yes?
Sir, you're aware of my job. You know the answer to that.
You're not going to answer my questions? Are we going to start this way? Are you the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, yes or no?
You know the answer.
Where we go from here? Where do we go as a country when you can't even answer the question, are you the Attorney General? You know what I'm talking. You know who I am. It's complete angst. I hate you. I hate you for being white. I hate you for being Republican. I hate you because you don't believe what I believe. And on the other side, Josh Hawley feels pretty much the same. Not because of any color, but you despise, I despise you because you are not what this country needs. And it only goes downhill from here.
Mr. Ellison, you're in my courtroom now. You're under oath. So I suggest that you answer my questions. You the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the state of Minnesota? Yes or no? Let's try another question. Are you familiar with the $9 billion in historic fraud out of your state, including the $250 million in the Feeding Our Future program alone? You familiar with that? Don't turn to the pages in your book to get your potted answers. Are you familiar with it? Yes or no?
Yes, I am familiar with it.
Very familiar, aren't you? Because the people who ran the Feeding Our Futures program came to you in your official office in the state capitol of December 11th, 2021, and asked for your help in getting investigators off their backs. They complained to you for upwards of an hour about state investigators going after them, and they begged you to help them, and you agreed to it, amazingly. And we know you did.
That's not
because
true.
It's all caught on tape.
Yeah, it is
Every
caught on-
single sentence is caught on tape. Here's what you said. Let's
And
take a look.
obviously you didn't
You
listen
said,
to the
it's not a
tape.
question. You said to them, send me the names of all these folks who are investigating them. You said to them, send me their names. And I'll take that list and I'll call the person over at education who is investigating them and say, what's going on? Why am I getting these complaints? Then he went on to say, I already have my team working on this. What day should we get together to discuss it again? You made pledge after pledge to them. You said, we've got to make sure this guy who's investigating them stops it. You said, you have my attention. I'm concerned about this. You said, let's go fight these people, meaning the people who are investigating the fraud. Why'd you do it? Why'd you help them?
Are you going to let me answer?
Please, we're all ears.
So first of all, you're cherry picking quotes out of there.
Why did you help them?
I thought you were going to let me answer.
Why did you
Are you
help
going to let
them?
me answer?
Why did you help
You
them?
let me answer and I'll answer you.
Tell the truth and I'll let you answer.
I will tell the truth.
Good.
Let's do that.
That'd be a nice change. Why'd you help them?
Now see, Mr. Chairman, I didn't come here to be insulted. I came here voluntarily.
You came here for the truth. Let's have it.
It goes on both sides. I think we have to admit it goes both ways. But I think what we have to analyze as a group of people is, why does it happen like this? Why do the Democrats hate Pam Bondi and anybody from the Trump administration? And why do people who are Republican absolutely despise what's going on with the Democrats? It's because, and if you've ever been in a position where you just can't stand somebody, I'm not talking about a dispute at work that somebody ate your lunch. Man, I'm sorry, I'll buy you a new sandwich tomorrow. All right, no, I hate everything about you. There's nothing in your persona that I can say is favorable. And it's mutual. There's nothing about Josh Hawley that Keith Ellison finds favorable. And so when you have that kind of an impasse, where do we go? I'm open to discussion, but if you're not willing to even discuss with me, one of the sides, if we're sitting across the table, one of the sides has got to, all right, let's talk about this. But if both sides are sitting there with middle fingers up, there's no place to go. It's if you ever gone in and watched the divorce court, I was stupid. I was wanting to be a lawyer. So I used to go, a lawyer friend told me, he goes, you want to be a litigator? Yeah. He goes, don't look at corporate litigation. Because if you look at corporate litigation, it's all this filing and it's this and it's this and this paper and this document and this subpoena. It's very vanilla. There's not a whole lot of emotion involved. You want to learn what being in the trenches is and understand what law is? Go spend a day and sit in the back of a divorce court. Okay, I'll do that. Do-do-do. Oh my God. I saw a guy get pulled in with handcuffs. And the guy comes in and I'm like, this was going to be good. I thought this was a divorce court. I didn't know this was like, family law. Criminal law. And he walks in and he's in handcuffs and in the green suit and they bring him in and stuff. And I'm like, what'd this guy do? Did he beat up his wife? Did that? Nah. So in his prior hearing, he was told he had to split the Corvette with his ex-wife or soon to be ex-wife. Unfortunately, the judge put the judgment in like that. When he pulled it up, because his defense was, you told me I had to split it with her. He didn't say sell it and then split it. He goes, you're going to have to split the Corvette with your ex-wife. The guy took a chainsaw or some kind of saw and he cut the damn car in half. called her up and said, come get your half of the car. I swear, I was dying in the back. They had pictures of a car on a screen where half of it, I mean, it was cut down the middle. I don't know even how he did it. And he called her and said, come get your half. Can you imagine having nothing to say to the person? Hey, honey, I know, I'm sorry for calling you honey. I know you hate me. I'll go ahead and sell it. And I'll get a check to you for half and I'll get half and we'll be on our way. No, you're so pissed off. You don't even want the air she breathes anymore. She probably doesn't want the air you breathe anymore. And so you cut a inanimate object in half because just to say F you to her. That's where we are politically. We don't want to sit across the table and says who gets the puppy. Right now, we're pretty much just looking at splitting the puppy in half. And I think they would be happy if we did that. But they don't want to do it. They want what you got. I think many people would be okay and like, you know what? Let's just put a wall around New York. Let's put a wall around California. And then we'll put a wall around Minnesota. All right, you guys can have at it. Most of us would be like, I'm good with that. However, they don't want that. Oh no, they want to invade Alabama. They want to invade different areas of the country and change your mind and put in, all kinds of mosques and everything else, and then tax you to death. So how do we even talk to people like that?
Why did you help them? The quotes are here. They're in black and white, and every member of this audience can listen to the recording. It's 54 minutes long. It's all in public. You can Google it right now and listen to it.
And listen to it all.
Why did you help them?
First of all, I didn't help them.
You did help them.
No, I did not. I certainly didn't.
You're saying you didn't do anything for them. You didn't.
Well, wait a minute.
I already have my team working on this again. That's not you?
I have my team assisted with the information that led to the prosecution and conviction of these people.
No, you didn't. You didn't lift a finger to prosecute them. No, you did not. You didn't lift a finger to prosecute them.
Federal prosecution.
You had, BS. You had whistleblowers come to you as early as 2019.
You're the one talking BS.
Hey, listen, it's my time.
That went on for like 6 minutes. It literally just kept going. And when you watch this stuff, just like you watched the Pam Bondi hearing yesterday, we don't have a government anymore. It can't function. And because government can't function, people here are left in limbo because what's going to happen? Are we going to play this game for the next, 3 or 4 years? Oops, sorry. Let me go ahead and play the rest of this while I fix that.
Doesn't know what you're talking about, sir.
No, sir. You now have encountered the truth and you don't like it. Why'd you take their money? Why'd you take their money?
I didn't.
You took $10,000.
No, that's a false statement.
$10,000 9 days after the meeting.
False statement.
You took $10,000. Here's what happened. They went to your office.
They
solicited money from you. They solicited help from you.
That's also wrong.
They came to your office. It was your official office. You met with them for 54 minutes.
No, they didn't.
They asked you for help. You pledged it to them, and they talked repeatedly about money. In fact, it's all they talked about.
That's a lie.
Money, 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 money. They said, we will put our dollars in the...
Yeah, sorry about that. I had to get my camera reoriented. Don't know why that happens. But anyway, there you go. There you go. It just keeps going on and going on and going on. And so the point of me showing this to you today wasn't to irritate you or anything of that. It is to understand, A, we're never getting back together. This is a final divorce. And now we're just trying to figure out who gets what. They're going to hate Trump. They'll do anything. They're not even trying to pretend. They'll put him in jail. They'll put his entire family in jail. They'll try to take his business. And then, as President Trump has said, he's only in the way. Then they're going to come for us. So every time I hear somebody say, we're losing the midterms, the thing I want them to know, the thing I want you to know, the thing I'd like you to retort back to them is, so if you think Trump's going to lose or you're going to sit out this election, what's your plan when these people get in? because this isn't a little bit pregnant. You either believe what we say, you better take the transformers, you better take everybody crossing the border, you better listen to this thing, you better pay the taxes we want to install on you. Everything that they want to do, you're compromising. Are you telling me you're compromising your integrity is one thing, but your family and your way of life by saying, no, it sucks? Because there's no choices. This is quite, I know they don't like it, but it's quite binary. It's either this crap or the right. Nothing in between. There is no independent. And if you keep saying Trump's going to lose, oh, it's awful. Just one time, tell me what the alternative is. Tell me in the midterms, if you're not going to vote for the GOP or MAGA, what the hell are you going to do when these people get in power? Because I think once you pull that veil off, you see that these people are full of crap, completely unadulterated poop, and they're just doing it for clicks. That's what I think we need to do. We're not going to convince people on the left to become people on the right. We're going to have to convince or demand that the people on the right shut the hell up, because we know you're phony and we know you're not going to be able to do the things you think you can do now if they take power. So you're just playing a game, and we're tired of dealing with you. We want the truth. We want real information. And if they can't give you that real information, maybe it's time to block them. I don't have time for it anymore. I know what I want for my wife. I know what I want for my family. I know what I want for myself. And that is what am trying to coalesce a group around and saying, let's make sure we get what we want. And that means accepting that we are actually winning. There's nothing data points. I don't give a shit about polls. The data that you can see with your own eyes, millions of people deporting on their own. You got to take that information. I'll be back in 90 seconds. I've got an interview with Ashley Brosfield from the Daily Caller. I'll be right back.
Welcome back to Fanfare with Barry Cunningham.
Everybody, I've got a great interview for you today. It's with Ashley Brosfield. She's with the Daily Caller. She's been on many times. I've seen her on RSBN as well, especially during some of Trump's rallies. She was there, and she's been writing some articles that are very, very interesting, especially with what we're seeing on TV today, and this entire brouhaha about the SAVE Act. So without further ado, Ashley, I hope I said your name right. Brasfield or Brosfield?
Brasfield, you're right.
Brasfield. So I saw your article, and in looking at this article, you were talking about whether or not the Republicans would be, I don't know if it was tongue in cheek or not, but it was pretty much, do they know that they have the way to do it? Let me just go ahead and bring it up here.
Right.
The Senate Republicans have the power to force Democrats to filibuster voter ID, so why don't they? So I'm just going to ask you before I go further into the article, why don't they?
Yeah, great question. I mean, this was the entire article was breaking this down. I spoke to Senator Mike Lee, who is sponsoring this bill on Friday, myself, and that to give perspective for the viewers. And on the House side, it's Representative Chip Roy, and this is the Save America Act. This is a distinction from the original Save Act, which you've been hearing a ton. This is another bill that, on top of it, puts voter ID along with the proof of citizenship that the original Save Act had. So it's on top of that, showing the voter ID, which is very important. I'm from Georgia. Anybody that knows the 2020 election knows that this was a major problem, and even going into the 2020 election, now going into 2024, we saw it again. So this is one of those things that, I think it's one of Trump's agenda. I heard this myself when I was with RSBN on the campaign trail. And I think it's one of those bills that going into the midterm elections would be a huge win for Republicans. I think many would agree with that. And at times this can be a bipartisan issue. We saw people like Democrat Senator John Fetterman, who's come out in support of this as well. So why don't the Republicans push this forward? And we heard from Senate Majority Leader John Thune saying, this is going to take some time. And why is that? Because of the talking filibuster. And why the talking filibuster is unique compared to the regular legislative filibuster. There is no rule change that happens.
Okay, let me stop you there. How did that happen? How did we, as a government, get away from what an actual filibuster is, where they had to, stand there and talk and do whatever you need to do? You get so much time, to now it's just like, hey, we're filibustering and we're just going to mail it in, and they don't have to do it anymore.
Right. Well, it came with the introduction of quorum in 1917. So it goes even back to then. But one of the most infamous speeches, talking filibuster speeches, goes back to Strom Thurmond on the Civil Rights Act of 1957. That's one of his most famous speeches. We saw Cory Booker break that. But why Strom Thurmond's specifically is the most resemblance of what could happen with the Save America Act is because it's one piece of legislation, not multiple. So that's why there is that we haven't seen that happen since basically Strom Thurmond's filibuster at that point. So that's kind of unique. It takes a lot of time, which, as we know, senators and congressmen in general don't like to do, standing on their feet, talking, putting in the time, working. So I think that's the hesitation here. And Senate Majority Leader John Thune put forward that, this is going to take a lot of time. He would have to head this effort. He would have to have a big portion of this leading to get this act passed in general. And he said that, we can focus on these farm bills, these highway bills, other legislation. But I think as many of the American people know that this piece of legislation is a large priority for the president. So why don't they do it? So this article basically broke down that. And, there's two things with this. You have to have a legislative day continuing. And I do want to read straight from the piece because I do think Senate procedure can be extremely complicated. I had to myself figure it out. But it's the enforcement of the two-speech rule, which limits each senator to 2 speeches on the same legislative question per legislative day by keeping the Senate in continuous session and refusing to adjourn. The majority can prevent the minority from resetting those speech limits. So that's where the Republicans get ahead here of the Democrats is you exhaust them, physical exhaustion. And it's whether the question is Republicans are willing to do it in that sense.
Now, even if it's a physical exhaustion is what the game is with it, does it do anything for the vote totals? I mean, it's still, if they need 60 plus votes on a regular vote, what does that even do, making them physically exhausted? They still have to do 60 votes, don't they?
Right. Well, this is a game really of tyranny here. And what the filibuster does, it opens up the opportunity for Republicans to go behind closed doors and make those deals that need to be made with their own party, even with Democrats, to make that filibuster stop. So it allows time for that deal making to happen. But also it would not require eliminating the 60 vote threshold like a legislative filibuster would do. And I just wanted to be clear on that from my article. But, it's one of those things that it's very Senate procedural heavy here. I don't think a lot of people get it. I think Senator Lee's done a wonderful job. And I know you mentioned to me earlier his ruby red slipper tweet. But I think it really is. They could, kind of slap their slippers together and kind of get this thing going. Of course, right now it's stuck on the House side. They're waiting to get that passed. But once it gets over to the Senate, the question is, will they do the talking filibuster?
Now, the alternative are the votes. When I've heard some people say the votes just aren't there to just break the filibuster completely.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the concern. I think you have people like Lisa Murkowski, Senator Collins, Tom Tillis on the Senate side for Republicans that are just not willing to vote for it. And we have a slim majority in both the House and Senate. It's pretty unprecedented times. So I think this is something that you're going to have to put forward using old strategy. Like I said, this is back, it's constitutionally it's not in the Constitution, but it's been used throughout the United States history. It's just kind of feathered away due to the idea of the introduction of quorum that they've stuck to over the last, 125 years, I would say.
So the likelihood of it passing, if it passes the House and going to the Senate, where does it go? I mean, because I think what you're saying is it's still either way going to need 60?
60 votes, yes. But also this, two-speech rule, it can, once that filibuster is complete and they cannot, they break that two-speech rule, so the game of exhaustion, then they can go to that 60 votes, and that's where it would end the filibuster, right? So this is the game of tyranny that they have to play. It's a strategic game. Even Senator Mike Lee himself says, there's no guarantee of this being successful.
Right.
But, this is one of those legislative agenda things for Republicans. Why wouldn't you try? And I think that's the question for people like Senator Thune and other Republicans that are going to vote no on this.
So are we looking at, basically, by your description, are we just looking at a Hail Mary? I mean, it's not something that we can even look at that has a viable possibility?
I don't know if I would say a Hail Mary, but I think you could definitely put the pressure on, which Republicans have failed to do. I mean, we're looking at the first year of a presidency, the least productive Congress in the first year of a presidency here. So, I think this is a move by Republicans that they can get major legislation across that's pushes forward the president's agenda here that would be successful and a win for them going into midterm. So, you can look at it multiple ways. Maybe it doesn't have 100% success rate, but it might be worth a try for Republicans at this point to show that they can get something done.
And one of the things that obviously now they're trying to do counter messaging, and one of those counter messaging are that women, if they get married, won't be able to get IDs. They won't be able to do it. It's going to disenfranchise tens of millions of women, which is complete trash because I've known some women. I'm married to a woman. My daughter's a woman. Both of them had their names changed. Both of them still vote. I'm not sure if you're married, but I'm sure you know women who are married. Why is the media allowing this? Well, I think that answers the question. Let me rephrase it. How do we counteract this messaging where they're just lying, straight out lying, and even the women pushing it know they're lying?
Right. Well, Senator Elizabeth Warren, she said this specifically on the Hill the other day. And I don't know a woman personally that's been married that can't go get another driver's license easily. And, this is one of those issues that even the president himself said that Democrats agree with 70% of it. And I think it's above 80% for Republicans. So their arguments are moot in a lot of ways. I think Senator Schumer called this a Jim Crow era law, so he's just not willing to go for it, and they're digging their heels in a lot of ways. I don't think the American people really buy it. I lived in Georgia. Stacey Abrams, we remember, was saying that African Americans can't go get their own driver's license, which we saw how that played out. Nobody bought that, and it actually ended up ruining the economy in Georgia. But this is one of those issues that just feels common sense for American citizens. I think I don't think they're necessarily winning on the messaging. I think Republicans here just have to push.
If you were a betting person, what would you put the odds at that this thing is going to be able to pass?
I do think that it's gained momentum. I'm going to go stronger than I would think usually, which is 75%. I believe Ernst just signed on as a co-sponsor to the bill. They're, I think, at 50 currently. Is what Mike Lee put out on Twitter today. So I do think they are gaining momentum. I mean, there is a major pressure campaign if you've looked at ACT and you just type in Save America Act. So I am seeing a lot of pressure from Republicans. You're seeing it in an interview from the president saying he wants it done. Mike Lee met with him on Thursday along with Senator Ron Johnson and Florida Senator Rick Scott as well. So you have all the names on board. It's just, can you get it across, and are they willing to do the filibuster to push it across to get those negotiations going? That's what the Senate is actually used for, and is it going to operate in the way it should be?
Other than Senator Fetterman, who do you think might be some of the likely Democrats that may cross over?
That's a great question. I mean, Fetterman's the first one right now. I think if you get the filibuster going, you might get a handful here and there coming across. Schumer not being one of those. I don't know if any specific names come to mind currently, but there's going to be some that have to come across the aisle. I think the House, once they get it pushed through and they get the ball rolling a little bit, if they really do senators, they're all over the age mostly of 75, I believe, at this point. So, if you want to use the physical exhaustion technique, I think the viewers should consider that. That's not that they won't last that long in reality. And I think the longest one was 24 hours with Strom Thurmond. So we'll see how it goes. I think it would cost them weeks on the legislative board. But, this is on John Thune, really, to head in this sense. So if he can get the ball rolling quickly, I think it can get done pretty quickly.
I would love to watch it. I think I would stay up and watch some of these people have to stand there for 10, 12 hours and have to carry that. But let's say it even does pass. Is it something that can be implemented before the midterms?
I do think. I think it will go straight to the president's desk for him to sign. One of the other arguments here is that it would, federalize elections. And I keep getting asked that on the media hits myself about this. And I asked the senator, I said, why is that question being, asked right after? And, he has a constitutional argument. If you go look at some of his expos, I believe I also included it in the article talking about the constitutionality. And, another person that's argued against this was Lisa Murkowski, who also signed on to the 2021 Democrat bills. And I put out another X post explaining why they are two different things completely. So it's really minimal requirements here because it's really two things. It's that proof of citizenship and it's the voter ID. And it wouldn't be federal. The states still run their own elections. They still count their own ballots. It's just the minimum standards that would be applied federally across states.
So in other words, you're saying is they're lying. you're being nice about it. I'll say it. They're lying their asses off as usual. Yes. And the media just keeps covering for them. All right. So switching gears here, because we're not going to know the answer to that one. I want to know if you've got any insight onto the next big thing, which would kind of make the other stuff moot. Is the government going to shut down, or are they going to come to some arrangement and get something done?
Yeah, I can't be helpful there. I don't know if the government's going to shut down, but I don't know who would win the PR war here, and that's what we faced in the last government shutdown. I don't really feel like either side won in many ways. I think people got very sick of it. We were at the longest shutdown, so if that's the goal, to shut down the government even longer, I don't see how either side would win, and that would be a possibility. I think the DHS news has kind of we're at a short news cycle at this point. People are forgetting things pretty quickly, so I'm not sure if the Democrats using that ploy to shut it down would actually continue to work. That's the question here. So I don't have any insight there, unfortunately, but I think that there's many focuses and they probably should make that not be the case here where they shut it down and they're going to extend longer.
As you're watching all of this unfold, and it looks like CNN and a couple other major networks have been pushing the fact that this may be a real 80-20 issue in terms of the SAVE Act or having, be able to check IDs. Why do you think, beyond the obvious of just wanting power, are the Democrats risking people seeing that they're really not voting in the people's best interest, their constituents? If there's an 80-20 issue, but there's 100% of the Democrats voting against it, aren't they risking some kind of, credibility with their own constituency?
I do think so. To an extent, the Democrats have let 20 million illegal aliens into the United States. And what that would do was destroy those individuals being able to vote in these elections due to that proof of citizenship. Places like California, where they just redistricted in defense of, Texas redistricting in Gavin Newsom's words. So it is this fight with them because I think they do know if those people are taken off the voter rolls or not eligible to vote due to that, ID and proof of citizenship aspects here, I think that they're putting themselves in real danger.
And speaking of the redistricting, I don't know how much you've dug into that at all, but what's the scuttlebutt and people are talking? We saw what Virginia has done. Wes Moore's talking about doing something in Maryland, but at the same time, you get the Republicans in Indiana that wanted to be goody two-shoes and didn't want to go there. It's insane because you can see these people will do anything at their disposal. Why are they so reticent on the Republican side to do something about the redistricting?
The Indiana debacle was quite something. I do not think the White House was quite happy about that when that all went down. Of course, Indiana already had, I believe, 7 seats Republican, 2 Democrat. It was planning to split the city of Indianapolis Indianapolis, excuse me, into 4 districts, and that would be the case there. I think it ended up turning the entire state red at that point. But I think the Republicans, they had this issue of not being aggressive, whether it be nationally or even statewide. And so, the Democrats, they, in defense of the Texas redistricting, which is ironic due to the fact that, I think COVID, we saw a mass migration of individuals from the state of California to places like Texas, like Tennessee, like Georgia. And so they tried to make it in defense of that. And you see people like, you said it yourself, West Warren, Maryland, Virginia, which just had a new governor, Abigail Spanberger. They're being aggressive here and they're taking the lead. And this is something that they got to watch out for going into midterms. I think they're a risk here with messaging and, just as far as legislative, agenda, I don't think they've done enough.
No, not at all. And I think another thing that keeps happening is we see as Trump called them, or somebody called them, the panicans and the black pillars, and everything is bad, nothing is good. How are you forecasting things with the knowledge you have of talking to people? Is it really as bad in terms of the midterm projection as some people out there were saying, or do you think it can turn around pretty quickly?
Yeah, well, I hate to be this way, but I try my best to not stay in the DC microcosm that it is, where they all have this idea, the same messaging. I try and go talk to people that are normal, regular Americans, and I think with the One Big Beautiful Bill, that seemed to be a talking point in Washington D.C. Of course, I think that was going to kick in more in 2026, but are people going to start feeling that palpably in their pockets enough for those midterms to go the way they need to? And, I can speak for the demographic of Gen Z because I am one. I think a lot of people would like to have that domestic policy, feeling it back in their pockets, but they're also sick of the foreign wars currently happening. We lived for 20 to 25 years watching war in the Middle East, are basically our entire lives. So they don't want to continue to see that. They want to see the focus on domestic policy, how they can buy a house before the age of 40. Some have the number at 30. Not good enough to me, in my opinion. And so, those domestic policies, and they didn't like the idea of the word affordability. They changed it to pricing. And now you see the president on the road each week going into the midterms, basically rallying around that idea. So, there is obvious push. I think they're finally hearing it. I go back sadly, to the death of Charlie Kirk, and he was a big influence for my generation, a lot of the younger generation. I think he played a huge part in President Trump's win. So his presence not being there, I think, has drastically affected that in many ways, and I don't think there's a voice supplementing that currently. So I think there's a lot of focus on domestic policy. You have the battle of Congress, who just tends to not get much done as well, which is always a fight. But I do think the American people are wanting the focus to be on them, and they want to see the American dream stay alive, and I think that's a struggle currently.
You just opened up a little window. I want to just jump in while I have time, because I don't get to speak to people in your demographic. You're young. You're obviously moving up in terms of your vocational objectives and things of that nature. And from what you're saying, it still feels like you guys aren't feeling the impact. What would make a big deal to Gen Z voters? Like right away, what would people say? Yeah, this is going to work for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can see it. I know they've talked about gas prices going down. That's one. But I mean, cost of living is still extremely high. And I think a lot of the jobs remain in those inner city places. And of course, where is the price is usually higher in those exact places when we're trying to make a living. It just feels like sometimes the American dream is not there. And I think that in order to do that, the affordability and pricing, they have to address it. And, they can be addressing it currently, but they might just not being a good enough PR job. We saw this with the election in November with Mamdani. He addressed this, and I think they're maybe modeling it a little after that. But another thing that I will say the president has done is he just addressed the institutional investors and banning them through an executive order. Therefore, single families have more access to homes before those investors do, or just completely banning them overall. And it's very nice to see, because in inner city areas like Charlotte, like Nashville, down in Florida, across the country, that's a problem. Immigration obviously is taking up jobs from people in my generation. And I will say, like every generation, we all have our quips with Gen Z. There is the segment of people that are extremely lazy, don't do what they need to do. But I think there is a portion of us that are very hardworking. It's probably one of the smartest generations there is, and that would like to achieve and be great. And I do think there is a segment of us that would like to see more from this administration domestically.
So let me ask you a question, because I'm in South Florida, have been in real estate for 30 years, and I'm just wondering how much of this I can't buy a house thing is a perceived inability versus an actual experiential issue that you've had or people you know have had? Because I know I could show people how to buy a home with limited capital expenditures, and I'm wondering if it's the messaging problem that people have just logged onto this and said, or latched onto this and said, we can't buy houses, or is it just not enough instructional? Because
It might be both. I think you might be right on there. I think it might be a little bit of both. But I mean, for instance, the Trump administration tried to propose a 50-year mortgage. I don't think that's going to be a hopeful message in any way. Obviously, that was, I think, a mistake on their end. But at the same time, I do think that our generation has kind of been sold the lie that you're going to go to college, but you're going to have all this debt when you come out, and that's the way everybody's doing. And I don't think that's the right message. I think Charlie Kirk actually had that very right, that you don't really need to go to college to get to where you need to be. And I think that's where a lot of people have been set up for failure, because they're in all this debt and they're not able to pay their bills. Maybe they do have a high paying job, but they're still paying off, their student loans and as such. But, I do think there was a shift in the number. And I spoke to somebody at the White House to be exact on this. And, I mentioned the not being able to buy a house until 40 years old. And they told me, no, it's actually 30. But I'm like, still, I don't think that's a good enough answer, especially if we have a declining population and you would like people to get married and have families.
Where are you? Without, you're a lady, I don't want you giving out your address, but like what city are you reside in?
Well, I'm from Georgia originally, but I live in Washington, D.C. now for work.
Oh, okay. Washington. Because
Yes.
I often think to myself, when I talk to people who say they can't buy a home, I always like to twist it around and go, well, who have you asked to show you how to buy a home? And so I often wonder is that the issue right now, that people look at a paper, they go on Zillow and they see 300,000-400,000 and like, I can't afford that. I could never buy that. Whereas, how do we get it instilled to people, especially younger people who are used to doing their own due diligence with the internet, to say, you can do it, you just need someone to show you how? And
Right.
I ask that question all the time, because I've told people I could parachute into any area in the country and buy a home within 7 to 10 days without putting a single dime down. And people are like, you're crazy. I'm like, no, I could really do it. And it's a matter of knowing how versus throwing your hands up and saying it can't be done. And so I'm just wondering if that would be something, if the Trump administration or Bill Pulte or somebody or Scott Turner did something and said, hey, let us show you how to buy a house. And they had some sort of weekly Zoom calls to show people how to do that. What do you think? Would that help?
Absolutely, I think that would help. I think that's also my argument against college in a lot of ways. You don't learn any of this in college.
No.
You don't learn any of this in public school, and there's an issue with financial literacy in general across the United States. So I think anything to help and push that and, encourage kids that are in their teens and high school to start learning that early is obviously the answer. And I do think, you can play the victim card, my entire generation all you want, but at the same, you have to put the, first foot forward and looking at the options there. But I do think there's also a segment that says, renting is more affordable and it won't cost you as much as buying a home nowadays. So there's all this different messaging, and, all of us are on these little computers we call our phones all the time, that we always are getting different messages, but also you could use this to your advantage, obviously, and looking at those options like you talked about. But maybe the government putting something forward is not the best idea, but I think you can have other options and other individuals that have large podcasts, other media outlets that could push messaging that helps them do that and has the resources for it. I think that's the answer here, and we all stop playing the victim card and just get down to the nitty gritty and let's solve the problem.
Because to me it seems like there's this huge divide, because it's people, when I hear they're worried about affordability, it means that they're interested in doing something, versus the other side, which is communist and they just want you to give them stuff. So, I think we should do everything possible to help the people who have the initiative to want to do something better with their lives and prosper at a younger age, versus the ones who all sit like this and say, just give me everything.
Exactly.
I got two last questions for you. One, you mentioned the whole turning point situation and the void because Charlie's not here. Did you think it was going to last this long before somebody could pick up the torch and continue?
Yeah, I was a little worried from the beginning, I must say. I think he's had such an impactful voice. And, I've been saying about Charlie since his death in September. I don't think the GOP realized what a powerhouse he really was for them. He wasn't a powerful person, but he was a person of power, is what I call him. And, I went to many Turning Point events as a college student and a special guest. I also have covered the events as media.
Right.
And, the impact in the messaging and, him going to outwardly debate individuals at those college campuses, you just haven't seen that being replaced by anyone.
Yeah.
And you have the individuals like the, Nick Fuenteses of the world, and they don't have the same characteristics or background as Charlie. Although they may have a talented voice in some, capacity with their communication, it's never going to be a Charlie who worked grassroots for these elections and these campaigns and understood the base of Gen Z like he did. So I was not really surprised that nobody could replace him. I do have concerns, though, that the White House doesn't have people in place that has the experience that he has to be able to give the president.
What the heck just happened? Why did that jump like it said 3 minutes? Wait a second. Let me see if I can fix this. Hold on. Why did it jump from 3 minutes to no minutes? I guess, hold on. I'm trying to check it. Oh, I don't know what happened. The last minute or and a half there kind of just went into the ether. Not really sure. But she was just talking about getting somebody to who's going to take up the mantle for Charlie. And they don't seem to have anybody. Seems like it's a void right now. I don't know how they're going to fix that. Who's going to be the leader of these young people? And, it's just one hell of a void. And one of the things, as you saw, and I didn't plan on taking the questionnaire, but she asked about the real estate stuff. Before I get to that, I want to explain something. It seems like a lot of people have a misconception. This talking filibuster does not equal 51 votes. The talking filibuster still needs 60. Still needs 60. What happens is if they can get the cloture vote, they may be able to get it to 51. But it's not a given that they're going to, automatically do the talking filibuster and you got it down to 51. No, that's not it at all. Like I've shown you many times in these votes, you have to have the vote and agree to vote to have the vote. And so once they have the filibuster, the talking filibuster or otherwise, then they have the cloture vote. So it's not necessarily 51 votes. It's pretty much still going to stay 60, which is contrast to if they just went ahead and broke the filibuster completely and just said, no filibuster. We're going to go directly to the vote and we're just going to need 51. But as of right now, they don't seem to have the votes to get there. They might get there. They might get there. I mean, I heard now we're at about 48 with John Fetterman. We could be at 49. So if we get like two more, and if Thune has the cojones, they could get to break the filibuster completely for the Save America Act, as somebody aptly corrected me in chat. But back to what Ashley was saying, I've noticed that it's become a mantra on the left and with people on the right. Oh, it's just too affordable. We can't buy a home. And I don't ever see anybody say, well, you know what? I'd like to learn how to. You just don't get bestowed a house. You have to learn how to buy it and be a homeowner and everything else. But I never, ever, you guys can tell me if you ever see anybody say, it's too expensive, but rather, can you show me how to use it? How to become a homeowner? Nobody asked that. And I didn't mean to put her on the spot when we were talking. And I told her afterwards, you just went there with the affordability. She's intelligent. She's rising up the ladder. She works with Reagan Reese. And so can you not afford it or you don't know how to buy it? And I realized at that point, people don't know how to do anything. I don't mean that in a negative way or denigrating people. And maybe I just took too much for granted that in terms of what I learned at a younger age and how somebody taught me, homeownership isn't elusive unless you don't know what you're doing. Remember, all of us, at one point we wanted to learn how to drive a car. And if depending on what school you went to, you had to take driver's ed, or you could hire a private driving company to show you how. Or if you're lucky like me or lucky like Robin, my dad had construction sites, so I used to be able to drive, without worry about running into anything. Hey, go pick up some lumber. Go over there and pick up this and that. Didn't realize he was using me as his own personal forklift, but I would just, okay, let me get in the truck and go over there. Robin said the same thing with her father. Growing up in South Carolina, she learned how to drive in down there. But we all had to learn. You didn't just all of a sudden just get behind the wheel of the car and go, I got this. No, somebody had to teach you how to put it in gear. Somebody told you, this one pushes forward. This is the brake. This is your signal light. This is your rear view mirror. Somebody had to show you. And I find it odd because Robin and I, we watch shows like The Amazing Race. And how many of these people don't know how to drive stick shift? What do I do here? And I'm like, it's a stick shift, moron. And if you think about it for a second, if you don't know how to run a stick shift, yeah, buying a house is probably out the question. This is just moving in stuff into gear and using your foot on the clutch. Remember when he used to have the shift up on here? When your dad's truck and he would shift up here? That was some work. You're like, now you had to learn how to drive a stick shift. And then you turn on The Amazing Race and these people just literally stare. You watch them, they stare down. What's that? That's a stick shift, dummy. I don't know how to work that. Well, I think to many of these young people, buying a house is like looking at a stick shift. What do I do? Oh, it's too expensive. It's not affordable. Instead of saying, can you show me how to drive the stick shift? Because then I think a lot of them would go, oh, this isn't that bad. I understand what I need to do right now. What's a debt to income ratio? I don't understand what that is. I hope you guys do. If not, that's something you need to look up. Down payment. What's PMI? PMI? I don't know. What's PMI? Private mortgage insurance. Why do I need PMI? I'll leave that to you guys to look up. But if you don't know all these things, it literally would be like me walking in the kitchen and trying to make something Robin makes. Unless I've got directions or her standing right there, I'm not going to make it. And as I talk to more and more young people, it's blinking at me going, they don't have the foggiest idea what the hell they're doing. They don't even know what's needed. They don't even know how to put a contract together. Contract, what's that? They don't know. And if you're in that group where I like to buy a house and I don't even know that, then you're, the first thing that you have to do to change is to accept that something's wrong. Barry, you can't eat those blueberry muffins anymore. Okay, I won't eat the blueberry. You got to accept it. Want to stop smoking? Want to stop drinking? I think all those things that you do, you have to accept first that you don't know. I got to admit, I can't do it. Now you're getting somewhere. Can you guys show me how to buy a house? How much you got? How much can you afford? All right, now we're talking. Now we're going to find out that angle where you can fit in and then give you a list of here are all the houses you can be looking at. Don't go looking on the beach. That ain't going to happen, honey. You ain't there. And it's no different than you walking into a car lot and saying, I want that big shiny Cybertruck. There's a difference between want and what you can afford. See, I think this generation doesn't realize you don't start here. You start here. And one day, if everything goes right, you can be here. See, that's the problem with that whole trophy. Everyone gets a participation trophy is they don't realize there are scales here and that some people just aren't going to get the Cybertruck. You're not going to get the Lambo. You're not going to get the condo on the beach or the apartment or the house on the beach. You're not going to get it. Unless mommy or daddy is going to buy it for you, it's not going to happen. You don't have the income. You don't have the capability. Forget it. Where do I got to live? over there. Like every one of us. Where did you just think to yourself right now? What was the first house you bought? Or even go back further. Where was the first house your mom raised you in? Unless you were rich, it was not a house on the ocean. And then you move up from there. The progression. And so, in other words, to progress, then you have to be working, which is, that kind of eliminates a bunch of the commies. Which is different from what Ashley Brassfield is doing. She was working at RSBN. Now she's with the Daily Caller. She's working with people in the White House. She's building contacts. She's building her network. Yeah. Where are you going to be in 5 or 10 years? Right now, you don't need to have the giant house in Georgetown. You might just get a condo. And so nobody is sitting with these young people and giving them the recipe. And that recipe is what's going to enable them to enjoy the prosperity that some of us get to enjoy because we've already done all the things to learn. So I'm not going to preach about her or anything, or not about her, but people that age and that age group, because what I'm seeing, and it's starting to get really cemented, is it's a lack of knowledge, not a lack of opportunity. Zillow's got a big website, Redfin, Realtor.com. They're all out there. It was funny. I'll give you one quick story before we go to Super Chats. Robin, we're selling this house I told you about a while ago. And true story, today, if Robin was here, lady calls Robin. Yeah. So we did some checking on this property, and it looks as though you guys paid X and you're selling it for Y. How did you buy it for X? What do you mean? Well, was there something wrong? Did something happen? How did it happen? That's unheard of for you. See, she asked the wrong questions. The question should have been, can you ask the guy who owns the house how he finds deals like this? And that's a different kind of a question because it takes some humbling. Because Robin asked me, what do you want me to tell her? Don't tell her anything. None of her business. None of her business how we were successful in getting such a great deal. That's what I earned. That was the information that I garnered. That was the information that I spent 20 and 30 years talking to and understanding this is how I'm going to do. And the first thing I always learned is you pay what you want to pay. I don't care what you're asking. See, that's the biggest mistake. Oh, it's too expensive. For who? It doesn't matter. I'm going to give you this. You can say no. I don't care. Matter of fact, I hope you say no. If you say yes, I bid too much. If they accept your first offer, you're way overpriced. See, a lot of people look at the list price and they say, oh, it's too expensive. Who the hell's paying list price? I remember my dad used to buy cars and trucks, and he'd walk in like, watch what's going to happen here, son. Watch me talk to this guy. And I'm like, oh, I'm embarrassed. Okay, well, I don't know about these wheels here. And everybody will negotiate a car back in the day, but when it comes to property, I actually had a realtor. Robin had a realtor today call and said, how did you get that kind of a deal? Instead of saying, can you teach me how he got that kind of a deal? And I swear, it's truthful. Eventually when it's over, I'll do a post-mortem and show you guys what we did, how we did it, how much it cost, what we sold it for. I don't have anything to hide. I just don't tell you the address and stuff now because I don't want crazies going to the property. And Beth is here. I mean, she's in, I don't know, she's not here today because she's actually got 2 showings of the property today. And Ashley will be here tomorrow, and we'll go down. It's just a matter of knowledge, understanding. When I have the interviews with Kevin Demerit from Lear, the information he's given. When we talk to the guys from Pelosi Tracker, information, understanding what you have to learn so that you can become viable in what you're doing. And so I just, I don't want to go on too long, but it was one of those things as she was talking, I didn't know it was going to go there. I didn't know that she was going to, talk about stuff being unaffordable. And I'm like, well, Why is it why? And then you heard her. No one's teaching us. No one is showing us. And I think to myself, are parents not showing kids? Or are they just letting them go to college and just say, good luck. Hope it all works out. See you in a couple of years. See you on Christmas and Thanksgiving, but everything else. No. The entire 4 years somebody's in college, somebody should be massaging these people and showing them, here's what you need to be doing, to the point where one day somebody might say, you know what? I don't think I need to go back there, Dad. You're really showing me what I need to do. Okay, fine. Well, then, unless you want the cake parties and stuff. Let's see what else here. Knowledge is power. Absolutely. That's it. My dad bought a different car every time the ashtray got full. That's too funny. When I bought my first home, we got almost $12,000 off. When I sold, 3x more plus 5K. There you go. Barry, asked Grok what it will take to pass the Save America Act. If the talking filibuster is used, how many votes would it take? Check out the answer. I don't need to ask Grok. I already know the answer. Maybe Grok doesn't know the answer. Go ahead, call Washington. Wait till it comes on Fox when they're not talking about a kidnapping or something. The talking filibuster does not eliminate the filibuster. If the talking filibuster does not eliminate the filibuster, then you still need 60. Ask Mike Lee. The talking filibuster does not eliminate the filibuster. You guys are so here we go. 3/4 of what I spent in college was wasted. And Christine said, Gina says, you're not alone. Nope, not alone. A lot of people. Bitch slap here. No, I'm not bitch slapping anybody. I'm just saying that there's a lot. It's very confusing, but the talking filibuster is not going to eliminate the filibuster. It's going to be good entertainment, tuning in and watching some of these old people stand up there and try to talk. It'd make great entertainment. Talk to a realtor, a mortgage officer, and all of your questions will be answered specific to you. It's free. Exactly. Watch who the realtor is, though. Grok is useless then. No, Grok isn't useless. Well, here, let me do it with Grok and let me see what it actually says, because the other thing with Grok is, and this is really important, you have to be asking it the right question. Oh yeah. See, that's where some people, have an issue, because they don't ask the right question, and so they get a wrong answer. So let me go ahead and put this in the Grok and see if we can't talk about it. So here's the question I'm going to put in. Let me go ahead and, is it this window? No, wrong window. Wrong window. Hold on. So you guys can see along what I'm saying here. Let me remove that comment real quick. And I'll put this up. This window? Yeah, we can go with this window. All right. So I'm going to ask Grok, does the talking filibuster eliminate the need for 60 votes to pass the Save America Act? All right. It's thinking, it's coming up, it's searching the web, and here we go. No, reinstating or forcing a talking filibuster would not eliminate the need for 60 votes to pass the Save America Act or any other act. It's what you ask. If you don't know what you're asking, you're going to get an answer. Oh, buried it. Grok says otherwise. No, it doesn't. It says it right there. You saw what I typed in. Does it eliminate the need for 60 votes? No, still need 60 votes. Done? You finished? I mean, down here, it goes through the different scenarios. It goes, The 60-vote cloture thread remains in place unless changed, which would require a nuclear option or formal rule change, something the Majority Leader Thune has said lacks support. What are we talking about here, people? I mean, seriously. If you want to use AI, when people say AI is dangerous, the part of dangerous about AI, or what is, like the other lady said, what is Grok useful for? You got to be able to ask it the right questions. If you don't ask it the right questions, you're not knowing if you're going to get the right answer. Somebody goes, I ask Grok trick questions just to keep him on his toes. That's funny. Oh, that's funny. I like that. So anyway, yeah, you guys just got a quick reality check, basically, in terms of what this talking filibuster thing does and doesn't do. And you still need to get there. The only way we get away from it is if they find the cojones to do the nuclear option and break the filibuster. None. Break it completely, which I think that's what they should do. That's what they should do. That'll get it to 51. I love this. I love how you said that. If you don't know where you're going, you probably end up somewhere else. Yogi Berra. That is so perfect. So perfect. Looking to see, talking about Americans are wildly supportive. Yeah, well, just do it, bro. Do it. Okay. Oh, okay, that's what it is. I'm using Super Grok. Somebody's like, Super Grok is better than regular Grok. Yeah, that's Super Grok. That's what I use, which I get as part of my member. But you understand, I wasn't trying to show anybody up. I just wanted you guys to realize that, and I knew it before I even checked it in there, so I already knew the answer. But it was basically, you got to know what you're asking in order for the machine to give you the right answer. And there's nothing wrong, and practice with prompts. You can even ask Grok for prompts. Grok, what's the best prompt I can give you so that I can get accurate information about the voting process of the talking filibuster? And it'll say, ask me this way. I do that all the time. What's the best way I can get you to get me the best answer on how to tie my shoes? And boom, it'll tell you, I want the question with this information. Then you ask the question. Yeah, that was free. You can have that. That's free. All right, you can have it. All right, so let's go ahead and do super chats. Let's see here. The arguing back and forth in committee hearings reminds me of the Ben Stiller slapping the monkey at night at the museum. Good movie. G Mark. Wait, am I started at the bottom? I'm sorry. Rescue Mom, thank you. Chiosop, if they accentuate more that if they leave voluntarily, they'll put back in line to apply to come back legally. More would leave. And pray for protection over President Trump, as always, and the ones who are loyal to him, God, and protecting him. So pray like never before. Luke 10:19 says we all have the power. Fazul, windmills are only good for miniature golf. A lot of that in Myrtle Beach as well. John C. Black Pillar scratch defeat from the jaws of victory. I love that saying. Jerry Finn, Barry is my news guy. He's the only news I watch. Thank you, Barry. I appreciate your contributions. And I don't want you to think I was trying to embarrass anybody about that whole talking filibuster thing. That is a great indication of how so much BS is out there. And it just takes you, having to dig more and ask the right questions. Chiosop, civil or criminal, the punishment for entering the country illegally is deportation. Yep, bingo. G Mark, clearly it's a battle of good versus sheer evil. I agree. G Mark, again, you can't counsel with a demon. They're infiltrated. That's very hard to do. Exactly. Let's see here. Eric, the argument, I just read that, of Night at the Museum. G Mark, very educating the younger gen may be your calling. Been there, done that, tried to work with a bunch of them. The idea to work with people who are in a different age group is they have to submit. Doesn't mean that they can't ask questions, but they have to realize this is how you do it. and then follow said directions. Then nobody can explain to you why 2 + 2 = 4. You just have to accept 2 + 2 = 4, and 2 × 2 equals, gotta do it. Students. And Buddy Sanders, learn to drive plowing fields and grandpa napping in the shade. Oh, that's the way you learn, though, isn't it? By getting there and doing it. I feel bad for people who didn't have the opportunity to learn like many of us did, because it was just nice learning how to drive. All right. I'm not sure if I will see it tonight. I will post it if I am. So I'm not sure. Ashley and the kids will be here tomorrow. I'm sure Robin's got me doing a whole lot of stuff to make sure everything is perfect for when they get here tomorrow afternoon. So I will talk to you, and I will post, if I go live, it'll be 7:30, but we shall see. Thank you guys. And here's the after party.
Fan.